Good fit. Hold on. I'm gonna go get some water real quick. Be like a couple minutes. Be right back. Got some big news when I get back. Big news. Good shit. Give me 1 second. Got you. Alright, I'm back. You hear me? Alright. I gotta set up real quick. Big news. This happened within like the past couple hours or so. 1 second. Let me know when you're ready, Jafet. Alright. In 3, 2. 3, 2, 1. We got 6 accounts now, baby. Yes, sir. 6. You got 6 of them bitches. Check my CPU usage anyway. It's at 80. It's at 78% right now. If I wasn't streaming, it'd be at 60%. It's yeah, it's at like 74%, so 74, 75. Probably gonna be, check it after I do this real quick. Oh, it didn't go down at all. Nice. Lol. Oh, I should have done it over here. You're about to see how bad it's gonna be in a second. This one I might need to have to restart that instance at least. Any uses? I don't know. Hold on. Let me do this real quick. Gee willikers. Task manager. Yeah, it's running at like 75%. So it's running literally at the same amount it was whenever I was running only 4 accounts doing Stairway to Heaven. Yeah, these are my friend Tech's alts. Like I said, he don't play the game anymore. He's like, yo, you can use these. I bet. I appreciate it. I see where we're gonna have a little bit of issues with streaming specifically. It's gonna look a little laggier, especially. Holy, on. But yeah, we got nothing on that account, nothing on this account. Nothing on that account. No huges yet. I did hit max rank. I think these accounts are about to hit max rank too. I think, yeah, this one already did. Uh, What the fuck is it? But yeah, we are absolutely gaming now. I just gotta get these other accounts to max rank. I know one of them's great. Rank 17, which I immediately need to get that one to 20. Uh, I need to start sending shit to my other accounts. Yeah, the alts. The new alts, that is. I guess those accounts now I gotta get fucking. What is it? I gotta get, that other shit too. Oh god. Oh, wait, what? You still here, Jafet? Holy shit, the frame rate's awesome. Let's see what Baldy's videos popular.
Today's video is
Oh, whoops.
brought to you by HelloFresh. It's just so stupid. On them in a bit. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Casual Criminalist. As always, I am your host, Simon. What happens here is one of my writers, in this case David, thank you David, has written me a script. This is a famous one. This one is of like American serial killers. I don't know, I feel like there's quite a lot of them, but isn't this guy's one of the most notorious, especially like in a historical context? H.H. Holmes, lady killer in charge.
Oh yeah, see now I'm at 66% CPU, so this isn't even that bad. Unless I just turned off stream. Okay, yeah.
Child murderer. And
Let me just so let's see what else I need.
I made a video about this guy years ago on a YouTube channel that I do called Biographics. And he had some sort of like crazy hotel with trapdoors and all of this stuff. And Dave was like, Simon, a lot of this is, I mean, not overblown, but like a little bit like, there's been a bit of a sprinkling of artistic license. That's the phrase throughout the years. And I'm like, there's no surprise there. And I'm just wondering, how wrong has David found my Biographics video to be? Because he'd never say it to me because he's too polite. But he'd be like, Simon, I watched your Biographics video. That was incorrect. That was incorrect. That was incorrect. David, I'm sorry. Not really. I don't know. It's probably good because I like to think my writers do. I have no idea. I can't remember who wrote that H.H. Holmes one back on my Biographics channel. I'm sure it was good because I just make brilliant stuff consistently all the time. That's sarcasm. Let's get into it, shall we? Detective Frank Gayer stood in the dirt cellar of number 16 St. Vincent Street. The smell of rotting flesh hung in the air. Taking the shovel he had borrowed from next-door neighbor, he began to dig with a sense of dread mingled with resignation. He knew exactly what he was likely to find. Frank Geyer was a 19-year veteran of the Philadelphia police force. He was no stranger to murder. Age 42, the stout figure, sharp, serious eyes, thinning, slicked-back hair, and a large, bushy moustache partially occluding his bitter scowl. He sank the shovel into the loose soil of the cellar, working steadily, quietly, along with his thoughts. Dirt sprinkled his dress shoes and the cuffs of his tailor-made trousers. All I can think of there is like, how would he hear? Why would he be alone with his own thoughts? Why is he not listening to a podcast? Why is he not listening to the cat when he's digging for bodies? When's a better time to listen to the Casual Criminalist and tell your friends? Do it! Who also dig for bodies about the Casual Criminalist. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you've... I don't know, do people who like work in the police and mortuaries and stuff go home and listen to True? Probably not. It's not like I go home and... No, I do watch documentaries. Oh, so maybe they do. Maybe they do. It was the summer of 1895. Oh, that's why he's not listening to podcasts. Okay, I see. Historical context. For 8 months, Frank had traced the movements of Dr. Henry Howard Holmes across the United States and into Canada. Frank was on the trail of the 3 missing children of Benjamin Pieterzel. Pieterzel. Thanks for the pronunciation, Guy David. I'll do my best to remember it throughout the rest of this episode. A man who had been murdered. Well, he's just been murdered, so he's probably not going to come up again. Woo!
That's a little insensitive.
Well, that's really morbid, isn't it, Simon? He's dead, and that's his only thing in the historical record, and you're celebrating that. You psycho. After the murder, 3 of Pieterzel's 5 children were said to be in custody of H.H. Holmes, their exact whereabouts unknown. Frank had been assigned to find them, and Frank was very good at his job. The detective had arrived in Toronto, where he spent 8 days searching for signs of a house that H.H. Holmes may have rented. It was then he received a tip that the house down on St. Vincent Street had been rented by a man fitting Holmes's description. Ah, the past. Whenever you rent it, it's like, here's a giant contract you have to sign. I'm going to need a copy of your ID. Going to need a bank statement. It's like, what? Okay. And then you go around to buying a house. And it's like, oh my God, I didn't even know I had 6 forms of ID. He was said to be traveling with 2 young girls. No word was said of the little boy who was also missing. Months earlier, in late October 1894, a neighbor, Mr. Reeves, saw Alice and Nellie Pieterzel sitting on the veranda of 16 St. Vincent Street. Nellie clutched a wooden egg that opened at the top, launching a spring-loaded toy snake out of it, much to the young girl's amusement. That sounds like a good toy. I'd get my kids one of those. She'd love that. The boy's too young. He'd just be terrified of it, because he's a coward. Holmes had borrowed a shovel from Reeves, saying that he wanted to dig some furrows in the dirt cellar in order to grow some potatoes.
Yeah, my son's a pussy.
I'd be like, if he asked me this, I'd be like, what is a furrow? God, my vocabulary is so bad sometimes. I'm like, how? I'm like relatively educated, but my vocabulary is appalling. I'm not as educated as David, because David's email handle is Dr. David Baker, and I'm like, David's a big brain.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
The shovel which Holmes had borrowed was the same tool that Detective Frank Geyer now clutched. There was no sign that any potatoes had been planted in the cellar. Uh-oh. How do you grow potatoes in a cellar? What are you up to? Potatoes need light to grow. That's how plants work. I can't believe the first question is, what's a furrow? My question would be like, mate, this is 1895. You're not going to get some hydroponic going in your basement. What are you talking about? As Frank continued to lift the dirt out of a recently disturbed patch of earth, the stench of putrid flesh only got worse. It became overpowering. Whatever or whomever was buried down there in the dark cellar had already become badly decomposed. The decay was worsened by the summer heat. Digging down to the depth of only 3 feet or 91 centimeters, Frank discovered a bone belonging to a small human being, a young girl's forearm. Continuing to excavate the scene.
Some girl's ugly. No offense. Actually, full offense. I don't care. They dead. This is ugly. Alright.
Seen more gently now as not to damage any further remains, Frank uncovered the frail bodies of Alice and Nellie Pieterzel. They had been stripped naked, and each of them lay on their sides, facing each other in the fetal position. Some accounts claim that Nellie's feet had been cut off, so the girl could not be identified by a club foot. Other accounts attest that the bodies were interred in the cellar, completely intact and whole. Ah yes, 1895. The problem is this was 130 years ago. So basically, you do get these things where it's like some accounts say this, some accounts say that, and it's like, do we know which one's correct? No, there's like no primary evidence for this. And you're like, okay, the past, everybody. The bodies of the two girls were indeed in an advanced state of decomposition. Tiny red worms infested their shallow grave. Their skin and vital organs had already begun to liquefy in the damp, malodorous earth. There's another big brain word. I know what malodorous means. You know when you read words and you're like, I know what that means, but it's a word that I just never use in casual conversation, and I wish I would. Because when you meet someone who uses big words, you're like, yeah, at least I am. I guess you could also have when someone's using them and you feel like they're purposefully using big words, then you're like, well, you're a bit of a prick. But if it's just someone who's using the correct big word, you know, where it's like, they're not like, oh, you know, like this. They just use the correct word without even thinking about it or trying to sound smart. I'm always like, I'm a little bit jealous of that because it makes you look so clever. But then it's like, if I tried to use words like malodorous, everyone would think I was a prick because it would be blatantly obvious that I'm trying really hard to sound smart. So I just don't try. Anyone else film that? Is that just me? Is that a weird quirk about me? I sometimes wonder if other people feel like these same things. Let me know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Oh my god, we were talking about something really horrible and I just took it aside to a comedic aside. It's not really appropriate. When later called upon to identify the bodies of her children, what remained of their flesh was blackened and falling off, and Carrie Pietzel could only identify Alice by the thick braid of her hair. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is not nice. Some accounts claim that H.H. Holmes murdered the girls by forcing them into a steamer trunk, whereupon he pumped it full of noxious gas with a hose in order to asphyxiate the girls. H.H. Holmes, you're up to some like proto-Nazi you weirdo. Other accounts, there's a lot of proto though. I used that word and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm using it correctly. Maybe I am a big brain, although it's not that complicated of a word. Other accounts simply state that H.H. Holmes had poisoned the girls by slipping essence of nightshade into a mixture of other deadly toxins into their food. Dr. Holmes, after all, for some years had run a pharmacy. He knew what he was about. H.H. Holmes had attempted to burn the clothing the girls were wearing at the time that he murdered them, but he had packed the delicate bundles of cloth too tightly into the small metal chimney, and large scraps of their clothing survived. Holmes also appears to have made no attempt to destroy or remove Nellie's snake egg contraption from the home, and several short notes that the girls had written to their mother. Uh-oh. Come on, dude. Everyone knows this. Anyone who's burned a book, and I've burned many books in my life, knows that you've got to ruffle the book up. You can't just put a book on a thing and set it on fire. It's not going to work. It's too thick or dense or whatever. You have to like tear it up and like crinkle the pages. That's how you burn books.
Minister Goebbels.
It's useful information there for the next time you're burning books. These belongings were discovered by Frank Geyer and packed away into evidence. After murdering the two young girls, Holmes abandoned the 16 St. Vincent Street house and disappeared. When another tenant moved into the house, they could not bear to go down into the cellar or use it for storing anything due to the terrible smell which hung in the air, refused to dissipate, and only grew stronger. One, they just relaxed. They were like, it smells like there are bodies decomposing down in the cellar, love. And the wife's like, oh, I don't know, let's just not use the cellar. It's like, well, we rented this house and it's got this big cellar. I thought we could grow some potatoes. Oh, don't worry about it. If my smeller smelled like rotting bodies, I wouldn't call the police. I'd call a handyman and be like, hey, can you ever look down? It smells like something's rotting down there. Can you go down there? Maybe we can damp proof it. Maybe we could do something like that. And he'll go down there and be like, mate, let's call the police, because either you've been burying bodies down there or someone else has, and I'm guessing it's someone else, because you called me to investigate the smell. Which, unless you're very self-sabotaging, would be, why are we going so deep into this story? It's not necessary. But that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't call the police. I'd just be like, what's that smell? That sounds like something a builder needs to fix. And then I'd get arrested. And they'd be like, were you trying to cover up crimes? It's like, no, I wanted to use my cellar. I wanted to put like little wines down there. Maybe like a sofa. I don't know. What do people convert basements into? I wanted to make it into a man cave. I'm not trying to cover up crimes.
Are you kidding me?
With the discovery of the bodies of Alice and Nellie Pietzel, Frank's job was not yet finished. He set about locating the whereabouts of the little boy, Howard Pietzel, just 8 years old, who some weeks earlier had been separated from his sister. Using oblique references to Howard in the letters that Holmes had periodically Come on, Simon, get it together. It's 8:30 on a Monday morning. This is my first thing recording of the week, so I apologize for slipping over my words, rambling too much. I also don't know if you can hear, I'm a little bit congested. My kid got a cold, and I was like, and lately she has a little trouble sleeping alone. So she'll like come into the bed in the morning, and I'm like, and you can just feel her breathing. She's like breathing on my face, and then she's like, and you're like, oh god, you just coughed all over my face, and I'm like, I'm definitely getting sick. And then I got sick. Woo! But I'm dosed up on ibuprofen and caffeine.
Cocaine, pills, whatever it is, I'll do it.
We're good. We're good. There's 22 more pages of this script. Holy shit, David. Why'd you do this to me? He delivered me one that was 50 pages. I'm like, David, this is a 4-hour podcast, David. Why? Using oblique references to Howard in the letters that Holmes had periodically sent the boy's mother, and using witness testimony from Toronto neighbours who had spoken with Alice and Nellie, Frank determines that Howard Pietzel was allegedly attending school in Indianapolis, back in the United States. Frank gravely doubted that this was actually the case. Yeah, he's not back at school. It's like, where did he go? Oh no, I didn't bury him in the basement with the other children. He went off to finish school in the United States and no one's ever heard from him again. How about we just dig a little bit more in the basement? Let's just dig around that little basement a little bit more, okay? After arriving in Indianapolis, Frank spent weeks dropping by almost every rental house in the city, roughly 900 houses in total. He was looking for any sign that H.H. Holmes and a small boy had been there. Finally, Frank alighted on the suburb of Irvington. Alighted is another one. They say it on some undergrounds, London Underground tubes. You'll like be riding around and they'll be like, change here for Elephant and Castle line, or whatever, you know, this normal, Elephant and Castle's not a line, it's like a stop where I used to live, actually. There'd be like these lines, and then some of them, it's like, a light here for Sloane Square, and you're like, what is this, a light? Does that mean change? And yeah, it does. Just some of them say a light, and I had no idea. I must have been like 20 years old when I finally Googled a light. The detective discovered that Holmes had rented a house a few days before disappearing again. This was 2 weeks before Holmes murdered the Pietzel girls in Toronto. On October the 3rd, 1894, H.H. Holmes had gone by a repair shop in Indianapolis to get some surgical equipment sharpened. Uh-oh, that sounds serial killery. Eyewitness testimony stated that a boy was with him at the time. On October the 5th, Holmes hired a spotty-faced teenager named Elvit Mormon. Wait, we know he was a spotty-faced teenager, but we don't know whether he cut off the girl's clubbed foot. Come on, past. Can we write down the important details? And the only thing we remember about this teenager is that he was spotty and maybe murdered. Come on, Simon, have some respect. Jesus. I find it easier to distance myself from the crimes when they're less modern. Like, I know it's bad, but 100 years ago it feels somehow less immediate. Whereas if this was set in the present day, I'd be like, I don't know, more respectful, which doesn't really fit. I guess because one thing is everyone who's related to this case is long dead. Like, these are the age of my great-great-grandparents, and they're all dead. I've never even met them. My parents have never even met them. I did meet my great-grandmother one time on her 100th birthday party, and I never met her again, and then she died. Woo! Simon, what's wrong with you? Why are you telling this story? It's not important. That same day, Holmes entered a drugstore near Irvington and purchased cocaine. Woo! Chloral hydrate and chloroform. Holmes is throwing a party. A weird party, possibly with murder. We also know at the time that Holmes had a vial of cyanide and a clutch of wolfsbane in his possession. On October the 8th, wolfsbane, I have no idea what it is, but it doesn't sound good, does it? Like, wolves are terrifying, and if it's the bane of a wolf, that's not going to be a good thing. On October the 8th, Holmes picked up his surgical equipment at the repair shop, the blades and bone saw now having been dutifully sharpened. On October the 10th, 1894, Howard Pietzel approached a local housemaid, asked her where he could buy food. Holmes had put him in charge of finding dinner for the evening. The housemaid gave the boy some eggs and butter, and Howard insisted on paying for it with the money that Holmes had given him. Elvin Mormon, the local errand boy, claims he saw Howard Pietzel for the last time around 6 p.m. that evening. On that very same night, October the 10th, H.H. Holmes murdered the 8-year-old boy. Some accounts claim Holmes poisoned him by spiking his food. Other accounts claim he chloroformed and strangled the child. After murdering him, Holmes used his surgical equipment to dismember his corpse. A consummate professional, Dr. Holmes left no bloodstains behind. He then stuffed the boy's arms, legs, head and torso into the wood stove that he had constructed, along with some gnawed old corn cobs and chunks of wood. He then doused the child's body in oil and set it ablaze. Jesus Christ.
Yo, I'm starting to get the idea this guy's not good. Starting to think this guy isn't a good guy. Oh, why? And the king suspicious. So, World 1.
Why? The fire burned hot and successfully cremated much of the body. What little remained of Howard Pietzel was then quickly scattered and buried at various points around the property. The house is... Wow. Why is people's obsession with burying things in their own house? Are you insane? Look, it's already just bits. Just go for a long walk. I don't want to give advice to criminals, but if you've burned a body and there's little bits of it left over, don't bury it all in your backyard, you idiot. Just every day, just take a little bit of the body, go on a really long walk, and just throw it in a river. Or like in a dump. I don't know. What's wrong with you? Or just keep doing this so it's easier for you to get caught. The house's caretaker, Peter Irelands, later said that the stench of the remains grew so bad that he just covered the whole house with lime powder because he couldn't locate the exact source. On the same night as the murder, Holmes swiftly left the house for the train station, where he arrived at 9 p.m. That means that in the few hours between the last sighting of Howard Pietzel at 6 p.m. and Holmes's arrival at the train station, the man had quickly murdered, dismembered and cremated the boy, burying and scattering the remains and scarcely leaving any trace of the killing, all in under 3 hours. Well, it's like, okay, so he was in a rush. Look, if you're going to murder someone, don't rush. Don't rush. Think about it. It's just so stupid. Why are criminals? I like that criminals are so stupid, but Jesus. Holmes thereupon caught a train to Chicago, where he arrived late at night and checked into a hotel. In his haste to leave, H.H. Holmes neglected to clean out the flue underneath a stove. A flue is a pipe on a stove that takes waste gases, smoke, and small solid particles emanating from a fire and blows them outside your home. When, months later, Detective Frank Gare arrived at the house in Irvington, he looked inside the flue and found a few of Howard Pietzel's teeth and some bits of his bones. Because Frank conducted his investigation long after Howard had been killed, the charred viscera Holmes scattered around the property had already badly decomposed into almost nothing. As a result, a few teeth and some bone fragments were the only signs that Howard Pietzel ever existed. Nevertheless, Frank was moving closer to discovering the extent of the callous and horrific crimes committed by H.H. Holmes, whom the mustachioed detective in characteristic 19th century purple prose referred to as, quote, verily an artist in roguery. Language in the past was like, it's hard to read sometimes, but it was like people put more effort into it, didn't they? Nowadays, it's like, yeah, he was a sicko. Verily an artist in roguery. I wish I spoke like this. The discovery of the scanty remains of the young boy ended Frank's assiduous and painstaking 8-month search for the Pietzel children. They had all been slain in the coldest fashion imaginable. But at least now the facts were known. The detective later wrote, all the toil, all the weary days, and weeks of travel, alternating between faith and hope, and discouragement and despair, all paid off in that one moment. Truth, like the sun, sometimes submits to being obscured, but like the sun, it only submits for a time. Everyone writes a mate.
They do. Or my new accounts don't have huges, no. They have like Super Draws, VIP, Ultra Lucky. All. Like I said, my friend used to play the shit out of this game, but then he quit. Like I said, he's the friend I had that would buy a shit ton of shit in game for anybody else. Or not for anybody else, but just like, you know, he would buy a shit ton of stuff and then start playing the game. So.
Amazing. This guy's like, he's a PI. He's a private dick. Or a detective. He's a detective of some kind. I don't know. I'm sure David told me, I already forgot. But this guy is looking for these kids. And he's also like writing about it like poetry. Amazing. The truth of the career of H.H. Holmes was soon to dawn upon the 19th century world, to the utter shock and horror of those who heard the tale. Meet Herman Webster Mudgett.
Look. Yeah, they were all at the last world. So thankfully that ain't gonna be an issue. Hold on. I didn't realize this account. Wait, is this account? Yeah, this one's max on that. What? Man, he ain't do shit for this account. What the fuck? This one's ranked 20, this one's 17. So I still got a bit to go. Good. Play this video? I don't give a shit. I don't like you. Have you thought about that? Count not. Why is that one not hot?
Come with me, if you will, to a tiny, quiet New England village nestling among the picturesquely rugged hills of New Hampshire. Here in the Yes, 1861, I, Herman W. Mudgett, the author of these pages, was born. These are the words written by Mudgett, alias H.H. Holmes, in his autobiography, Holmes's Own Story, which the child murderer scrawled down on paper in prison in 1895. Oh, I just realized there's the primary rule of the Casual Criminalist. Like, we talk about like how criminals are idiots all the time. Often they're writing down their crimes. It's number one. The number one rule, don't write down your crimes. However, if you've been caught for all your crimes and you're in prison, now's a good time to write down your crimes. I mean, why not? You're already in prison forever. Maybe they're going to kill you, you know, pop you off. Kind of, why not? You can now. The autobiography itself is of little evidential value because in addition to being a killer, its author was a compulsive liar. Herman Mudgett was born in the hamlet of Gilmanton, New Hampshire on May the 16th, 1861 to Levi Horton Mudgett, a farmer, house painter, and later postmaster, and Theodate Page Mudgett, a dutiful housewife. They were devout.
That's what dark is. He's a Mudgett.
Methodists. Herman was the third born of 5 children.
Yeah,
Mudgett's family's reputation in the community was spotless. No tales of alcoholism or abuse. In fact, by all accounts, it would appear that Herman Mudgett had a perfectly normal childhood. Quite unusual for most children who grow up to be serial killers. Yeah, super rare. Normally it's this balance. It's like, okay, so the person is born with a bit of a predisposition to be a psycho killer.
Next time Gruffin streams, I still gotta ask him that. I gotta ask him, why the fuck did you just keep saying midget? I'm like, dog, you don't gotta keep saying the word midget. You know that, right?
And then also, they get abused the shit out of by their parents because, of course, that happens. But not in this case. It seems like he's like more 90% psycho. Like born killer, natural born killer. Isn't that a movie? Natural Born Killers? I feel like that's a movie. It's also unclear whether Herman was born with primary psychopathy, another hallmark of serial killers, which usually offers an explanation for those murderous individuals who do not come from broken homes. The classic telltale sign of a psychopathic child is of, I haven't even read it, but I'm gonna guess, torturing animals features. Is, of course, the torture of animals. Big brain. Also, exactly what you would expect after doing hundreds of hours of podcasts about crime. Yet, when interviewed, Herman's mother, Theodate, said, quote, I never knew him to torment animals. Some boys, you know, like to torment kittens, and sometimes they are very cruel to them.
Some boys like to torment kittens? I'll be talking about me the way I beat pussy up. Like, you're a homosexual.
But Herman was too tender-hearted for anything like that. This does not preclude the possibility that Herman was a psychopath, but it does rule out the most obvious manifestation of it in childhood. A school friend described Mudgett as quiet, studious, faithful, with refined tastes, not joining in with the rough and ready games of the other boys at school, and almost always coming top in his class. The other mothers in the neighborhood knew him as a well-behaved boy, and he was a favorite of theirs. Another school friend described Mudgett as, quote, the mildest-tempered, most inoffensive man I've ever met.
You have no idea.
Either something changes in his life, or he already has an incredible psycho killer mask. You know, the mask. You have to see it where it's just like they seem so normal. It's like, what's that guy? Was it Gacy? And it's like, yeah, he's just normal guy. He's a pillar of the community. He's on all these boards. He's a politician. Everyone likes him. And then he's dressing up as a clown and burying children in his basement. All of this would imply that as far as serial killers go, Mudgett's case is quite unusual. No childhood abuse.
You know what? Since you said that, Jafet, you're a Mudgett too.
No psychopathy. But there is an alternative explanation. Even as a child, Mudgett was skilled at pulling the wool over people's eyes. If we look below the surface, a few cracks begin to appear. Neighbors accused Herman of petty theft to the tune of 43 cents and trying to get paid twice by the local priest for the same job and defaulting on a payment for a pair of shoes.
Been hatching since update? Yeah, no shit you haven't. If I'm not mistaken, both of the whatevers, it's like 1 in 100 million. You're gonna be going a while, big dog.
Other neighbors attest that while Herman was never really rude or horrible to people, he was fairly dishonest and grasping around money. Yeah, okay, well, again, this would imply not that he's some psycho killer at all, just he's just not the most moral dude ever. All of this would point towards a budding psychological profile of a con man. Exactly.
Tiger.
It's like, this guy's a con man. And con man, I don't like... There's an obvious difference between con man and murderer. Like, con man is like, oh, it's not good. That's not... And there's also, you know, the levels of con man. If you're like... I just did a video... Was it on Casual Criminalist? I think it was. About a guy who was, like, conning people with a hitman website. And I'm like, well, he's not the worst con man ever, because he's conning people who were going to have someone murdered. Or like that TV show Hustle. And they only con criminals and horrible people. I'm like, you always want to support those guys. You're like, yeah, get it, get it.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
It. And then there's like con men who just con regular people. And then there's murderers. And then there's like multiple psycho killers like H.H. Holmes. It's all the scale, isn't it? It's all the scale. Many such people are also psychopaths. Oh, okay. That's... They...
Better not be calling me a bitch. I'm gonna knock the shit out you. Talking to. Wait.
Game is to defraud people of money rather than to rape or murder them.
I feel better now.
Again, if you are a psychopath, how about just be a really good con man? There's no need to get into the rape and murder. Just rip people off. Because, you know, look, what would I rather have done to me? Would I rather be ripped off, or would I rather be raped and murdered? I can tell you which one the answer is. It's to be con. Such a profile would fit Herman Mudgett quite well. Clean-cut and inoffensive on the outside, and on the inside compulsively driven to deceive and steal whatever he could. Herman Mudgett was born wall-eyed, with his left eye always straying to the side. As such, Mudgett rarely looked at people in the eye when he spoke to them, heightening the impression of shiftiness and duplicity. He was also something of a loner, not keeping any close friends amongst the other children. In his autobiography, Herman Mudgett claims that 2 older boys who were bullying him dragged him into the local doctor office to show him a human skeleton. Rather than be frightened, Herman said he was fascinated, and this drove him to want to enter the field of medicine. While much of his autobiography is nonsense, this particular story is a ring of truth. When Herman was 16, he met Clara Lovering of the nearby town of Loudon, New Hampshire. The story of... I like the name Clara. It's a nice name. The story of their meeting goes that at a church social, I wanted to name our kid Clara. It was one of the names bandied around. And my wife's like, I just don't like it that much. And I'm like, that's okay. So we chose a different name. The story of their, which I like as well. The story of their meeting goes that at a church social, Herman Mudgett saw Clara flirting with another boy, and an infuriated Herman asked the boy to step outside, whereupon a jealous Herman threatened to punch his lights out if he didn't leave Clara alone. Evidently, Clara's heart fluttered at this display of masculine aggression, and Herman escorted her home arm in arm, which in 1877 was tantamount to second base. Yeah, this would play out really differently today. The next day, Clara would be like, can you stop that? That is toxic masculine. Wait, So she was flirting with another boy. He comes over, it's like, stop it! These days it'd be like, that's not okay, let her do her own shit, Herman. Jesus Christ. You don't own her, Herman. This isn't 1890. Oh, wait, no, it is. The next day, Herman claimed to friends that he and Clara were engaged to be married. For 15 months, Herman and Clara were virtually inseparable, and the two married in secret on July the 4th, 1878, in front of a justice of the peace. Initially, the marriage was kept a secret, and Herman and Clara continued to live separately with their respective parents. Well, that's weird. I thought people got married in the past so they could, I guess Methodist. I don't really know what a Methodist is, but I assume in the 1800s they weren't
That is called a North Carolinian.
sex before marriage. Why not? I thought people in the past, let's get married quickly so we can get down to business. When Herman eventually told his mother of the marriage a few months later, she quipped, she couldn't have done much worse. She probably will have to support you. What? He was top of his class. He's going to be a doctor. What are you talking about? You sound mean. So, Dr. Smegma.
Huh? What? Doctor what? Doctor who? Oh wait, I'm regarded. Dr. Schmagma? I don't know why, Dark, but when I see your two messages, I don't know why it reminded me of Scooby-Doo. Like, whenever they're about to go on about to be chased. I could just imagine Dr. Smagma! It started a chase sequence. I don't know why.
Clara's family gave Herman a job working as a clerk in a grocery store in East Concord. Not long after, Clara gave birth to their son, Robert Mudgett. At the time, Herman's salary meant that he could not even afford to keep a household for his family.
Dr. Schmagma!
With her parents. But Herman's ambitions were to become a medical doctor. In 1879, Herman quit his job at the grocery store and returned home to Gilmanton to study under Dr. White, a Civil War Army surgeon in his late 60s. There he performed numerous dissections on cadavers with the good doctor. Oh, yes, the past. You didn't have to go to medical school. You just said, how do you become a doctor? You apprentice, much like a carpenter. I like it. I do generally, I think apprenticeships are super underrated. But for medicine, I feel like there should be some, solid book learning going on. After
Medicine? It's called medicine, you dumb fucking Brit. God, this is why we seceded from y'all. Cucks.
3 years apprenticeship, in 1880, Herman Mudgett left Gilmanton to formally study medicine at school in Burlington, Vermont. Okay, well, there you go, on Dr. Wright's
Burling? That's a coat factory. That is not no.
recommendation. Brilliant. While at medical school, Herman stayed at a boarding house with a roommate named Fred Ingalls. Herman asked Ingalls not to tell anyone he was married. Ingalls raised an eyebrow, but agreed to keep it a secret. Herman Mudgett then promptly started hitting on the landlady's daughter to the point that people whispered that they were going to get engaged. This pissed off Fred Ingalls, and he told everyone that Mudgett was already married, ruining Mudgett's chances of bedding the girl. A little later, Herman caught Ingalls using his moustache wax without his permission, and it infuriated Herman beat the living shit out of Ingalls, giving him 2 black eyes and a scratched up face.
I'm glad I didn't live back then, because I know women didn't wash their coochie but once a week.
Holy shit. Can you imagine? It's just like, hey mate, how's it going? Yeah, I'm sorry I told everyone you were married and caused this big scandal. And Hernan dude just sees him using that mustache. He's like, motherfucker, that my mustache wax, you touch that again!
I'm sorry, man.
You keep your mustache wax out of your... You keep that mustache wax out of your hands.
Don't get me, please.
At the boarding house, Herman Mudgett conducted chemistry experiments using a variety of beakers, vials, and chemicals that he'd lifted from the laboratory. He also tried bringing home cadavers. Oh my god. What? One day the landlady was attracted upstairs by a foul, rotting smell. She found a dead body under Herman's bed. A traumatized landlady forbade Mudgett from bringing any more dead bodies home with him. It's a bit like, Herman, we didn't think it necessary to put in your rental contract that you can't bring dead bodies home. We sort of just considered it rote, but we're going to have to add that. You're going to need to sign...
Sir, could you please not bring bodies home anymore?
An updated rental contract with the body stipulation, okay? While in medical school, Mudgett took out ad space in the Burlington Free Press, offering to teach shorthand writing, a way for note-takers to quickly jot things down in cipher. The whole thing was a swindle. Mudgett did not know shorthand. He took a bit of money up front from unwitting customers and then dismantled the business. Uh-oh. And that was the end of it. Apparently he was a con man as well. After a single term at med school, Mudgett had run out of cash, so he went on a hiatus to teach at a school back in Gilmanton to save up more tuition money. At the school, Mudgett is said to have regularly and brutally whipped the kids. Holy shit. And
What about Nene?
anonymous account states that on one particular occasion, Mudgett borrowed an amputated foot.
Dude, when were y'all gonna tell me I couldn't bring home dead bodies? Y'all are tripping. Oh, is this not America?
From Dr. Wright and brought it into class to show the children a bit of anatomy, thoroughly horrifying them. After Hernan's arrest in 1894, the school superintendent vehemently denied that this ever happened on his watch, but Herman was dismissed from the school that same year, so it's unclear what happened. Herman was furious and wrote a 10-page letter to his former employer, vowing revenge. Don't write down your if you're going to get revenge, don't write about getting revenge. Just quietly get revenge. At least be quiet about it until the revenge is done, and then you can be like, that was me, remember me with the foot? And it'll be all the sweeter.
Oh, a sweet revenge!
In 1881, Herman Mudgett took his wife Clara and infant son Robert to Ann Arbor, where he continued
Robert.
his medical studies at the University of Michigan. Clara's family supplemented their living situation. The couple lived in a boarding house with the other students and their families. Clara found work as a dressmaker. Clara and Herman fought constantly, and first-hand accounts attest to the fact that Herman beat her rather savagely and rather frequently. Clara was seen on more than one occasion sporting black eyes. Domestic abuse got so bad that in 1883, Clara took her son Robert and just upped and left. Respect. I mean, of course, you should do this. But this is... people struggle to do this these days.
I have 6 accounts. Thank you. Since when? Literally a couple hours ago. I told Joe I had a friend named Tech who played the game, but he doesn't play anymore. He's gonna let me have his 2 alts to play on. I got Technology Alt 2 and Technology Alt. Like I said, he works a shit ton, so I didn't get the chance to like ask, or I could have asked, but it would have fell on deaf ears. He worked 24/7, so I was just like, okay, cool. So I asked him today, like, yeah, hold on. Huh. I didn't give him anything. These accounts, he just let me have them.
It's like, get out of abusive relationships, and in 1881? Jesus. I mean, good for you. Although they remained married, Clara had little to do with Herman from that point forward. Herman's fellow med students at the University of Michigan took note of the relish and enthusiasm with which he dissected bodies. God damn, dude, that is an indication of being a psycho right there.
This is ridiculous. I'm a professional.
One student reports that Mudgett talked animatedly about picking apart cadavers and claimed that Mudgett once again decided to take a dead baby home in order to pick it apart. That is up, my dude. What the On another occasion, while in the dissection lab, Mudgett reportedly cut off the foot of a dead child, put it in his pocket, and took it away for unknown purposes. I don't even want to
Can we not have collectors, like, good luck charms anymore? So we can cut off rabbits' feet, but I can't have a dead child's foot? I thought this was America.
I don't want to think about what those unknown purposes are. I'm done. Let's move on. In 1882, Herman Mudgett teamed up with the anatomy lecturer Dr. Herdman to make trips to local cemeteries to find extra bodies for dissections. Oh my lord, the past. What are you up to? The grave robbing, quite common in those days, was done by doctors and medical students who referred to themselves rather grandly as resurrectionists, while the University of Michigan...
More like resurrectionist. High five Jafet. He loves dead bodies.
Michigan was regularly supplied in those days with the bodies of dead homeless people. Apparently this was not enough to sate both Mudgett's and Dr. Herdman's appetites. Apart from a macabre interest in dead bodies, it's likely that Mudgett joined Herdman on these expeditions for a little extra cash. It's like, the problem is, Dr. Herdman, I'm just assuming, it's like, we need these bodies to teach medicine. And Mudgett's just like, I'm going to lick these later. What the f***? Herman was not popular at university. His grades were mediocre to poor. Many former students claimed, after he was charged with murder, of course, that they thought he was shifty and never trusted him. Apparently, Mudgett also exuded such a strong stench of body odor.
Also, I should let everybody know, whenever I rebirth these accounts to Rebirth 9, I used it on Fruit 99. Just so everybody knows as well. I made sure of that.
That it earned him the nickname Smegma, which is a gunk found under a man's unwashed foreskin, otherwise colloquially known as dick cheese. Oh my god, dude, did you smell of dick cheese? Ah!
Good thing I don't gotta worry about Smegma. I got my shit karate chopped.
Ah! It is amazing how you remember that people smell. Like, I can remember a time, like,
Baldy, how does this have a story? How do you have a story after we just talked about Smegma, Baldy? Baldy, don't piss me off. What? Jack? Jack, are you good, my brother?
Smell is such a powerful memory thing. It's like, I've met people in my...
Oh wait, I'm retarded. Never mind. Shut up, Jack. That's xenophobic. Whatever. Cat stepped on you.
life, and it's like, who have kind of smelled, and you're like, I remember that about you. There's hundreds of people I've met throughout my life who I've forgotten, but the ones who smell, they stay with you. Although I've never met someone who's like, is that dick cheese? Dude. Mudgett's med school reputation was thus, and also a smelly doctor. It's like, you go into the doctor's office, you just want it to smell like, you know, sterile. Even if there's like, even if it isn't sterile, you just want it to have that smell, don't you? You want to go up to your doctor, you know what you want your doctor to smell of? Nothing. Maybe like the cleaning fluid, something like that. Mudgett's med school reputation was quite different from the well-behaved little lad back in Gilmanton who was the apple of everybody's eye. It's quite clear that when Mudgett wasn't working a con, he would turn off his charm and could be quite the unpleasant, sullen, and taciturn fellow. It's another word I'd like to use more regularly, taciturn. While the male opinion of Mudgett in Ann Arbor was generally low, local female opinion of the budding Dr. Dick Cheese was a little more sympathetic. Really? Because
That must be a crazy nickname. Dr. Dick Cheese? I'd have to go to the board. I'd have to be like, yo, y'all gotta give me a different name, big dog. I'm sorry. I ain't gonna be Dr. Dick Cheese.
I just love his smell. Mudgett's manners may have been something to be desired, but he was rather strapping and masculine with a big bushy moustache, which seemed to have an effect on some women. A big glorious beard. However, at medical school, Mudgett did not have a reputation as a ladies' man, which is why people were all the more surprised
I'm
by
not
that
looking at
Mudgett
Discord.
had a wife back home. They were even more surprised when Mudgett suddenly appeared in the middle of a local sect.
Yo, Dark, if you're here, check Discord real quick. Hold on.
scandal, or rather what passed for a sex scandal in Michigan in the Victorian era. Mudgett had been paying a lot of attention to a widow named Mrs. Fitch, who was his landlady and also worked as a hairdresser in town. Evidently, Dr. Smegma's charms worked on the fair damsel, and the two fell into bed together. Allegedly, as a pickup line, Mudgett had asked the widow to marry him. That's not a pickup line. Then she discovered a letter Mudgett had written to Clara, who was still his wife. Mrs. Fitch had been bedded and dishonored without anything to show for it. For our younger 21st century audience members, this meant that Herman Mudgett, quote, David, ran that house into the ground and didn't even put a ring on it. David's knowledge of language in like mega slang. A paragraph ago using, what's that word? Taciturn. Few things are more disgraceful for a Victorian lady than getting her undercarriage serviced outside of the institution of marriage.
Undercarriage service, bitch. You got swamp pussy.
So Mrs. Fitch sued Herman Mudgett for breach of promise to regain some semblance of her honor. Mudgett flatly denied that he had ever promised to marry the woman. If her allegations were true, as a punitive measure, the University of Michigan would not have allowed him to graduate. They couldn't in good conscience allow such an immoral, womanizing snake in the grass into the medical field after all. Such, at any rate, were the morals of the time. Mudgett's reputation as a sexually disinterested loner during his time in med school served him well. Most of his colleagues regarded Mrs. Fitch's allegations as a joke. The grave-robbing professor, Dr. Herdman, defended Mudgett before the faculty.
Oh, Jafet. Jafet, you still here? Wait, never mind. Yeah, you aren't max rank.
Ultimately, Herman was acquitted. However, at his graduation ceremony in 1884, Mudgett walked up to Dr. Herdman, shook his hand, and promptly told him Mrs. Fitch's allegations were true. What, just to be a dick? He's like, congratulations, Dr. Holmes, you've just graduated. Oh yeah, now that I've got this medical degree, it was all true, you idiot. What a dickhead. Herdman was shocked and affronted. He later went on to accuse Mudgett of trying to steal several valuables from his house. When Mudgett later wrote Herdman for a recommendation to become a medical missionary in Zululand, Herdman refused. Shocking. For reasons best known to himself, 5 months later, Mudgett ran an announcement in the local paper that he had indeed won an appointment to go to Africa. Perhaps just to spite his former mentor, perhaps just because that is what compulsive liars do. In reality, Mudgett just buggered off back to New Hampshire. Mudgett's vaccine mandate. Herman Mudgett spent the summer of 1884 in New Hampshire with his parents. In the autumn, he moved to the town of Moores Fork in New York State, where he worked as a doctor and moonlighted as a science teacher at the local school. Holmes told everyone in Moores Forks that he was unmarried, and he proposed marriage to at least 2 women during his time there. Bit of an MO for you, is it, old Holmesy? One such woman had an ailing father who was Dr. Mudgett's patient. He died under suspicious circumstances. The body was scarcely cold when Mudgett proposed marriage to the woman who had just received, guess what? A sizable inheritance. Shocking news. Neither marriage proposal went through. Mudgett also formed a friendship, heavy quotation marks there, with primary school teacher Minnie Everett and started taking quote-unquote French lessons from her in his spare time. After a few months, Everett broke off all association with Herman, claiming that, quote, there is something lurking in that man's character that time will reveal. I do not like him. I firmly believe that he would commit murder. Oh my god. Okay. She censors his dark soul. Not even joking, he has a terribly dark soul. This statement is often quoted in biographies of Dr. Dick Cheese, but I find it a bit too
I think you call him Dr. Dick
on the
Cheese.
nose and prophetic. In all likelihood, the
guess
quote
it's
is apocryphal,
funny,
or at the
but-
very least said by Everett in retrospect after his arrest. In all probability, Mudgett's friendship with Everett broke down for other reasons, like a sullied romance or broken engagement, for instance. Yeah, I mean, that just sounds more likely, doesn't it? The fact that she's like saying, it's a bit too convenient. And when things are so long ago, the facts get mixed up, like the clubfoot baby. It's like, how... It's just not great records. Mudgett was also in the habit of screwing his patients. The townsfolk of Moores Fork circulated a rumor that Mudgett was treating 2 women for quote-unquote organic trouble.
Dog, he sounds dope. He's still getting laid when his dick smell like cheese? It must fire.
For which he
Literally, it's on fire. He got it.
employed some quote-unquote carnal methods. Dude. Also, how is this? He's like a smelly dude with a mustache. It's like, is it? And he's got like, I mean, I don't want to make fun of people with like, you know, problems, but he stinks.
He smells like my grandmother.
He's got a
Not to be mean to any, but he smells like shit. Get it, man.
the mustache, which apparently everyone finds super sexy, and he's got the weird eye problem where he just looks off to the side. Like, is this?
Wow, Simon. Wow, he has a weird eye. Wow, Simon. That's coming a lot from somebody that's sight retarded.
Guy's such a catch. Everyone's like, yeah, you can fix my organic trouble with your carnal methods. Weird. In addition to being a womanizer, Mudgett made himself quite unpopular in the town by being a deadbeat and a fraud. He would constantly buy things on credit and then blow off his debts. His landlord, Mr. Hayes, loathed him for neglecting to pay his rent on his luxurious house. It sometimes took weeks to even get a partial payment out of the guy. Despite the fact a doctor's wage was respectable and far above average, Mudgett had embarked on a career of criminal fraud. An outbreak of smallpox broke out in New York State in 1885. Oh no, we're not going to go here. He's not going to, like, fake vaccine people, is he? Mudgett got his hands on a case of vaccine and went about town claiming that he was appointed by the government and said the vaccine was not only mandatory, but it would cost 25 cents per shot. That's roughly $7 per jab in today's money. While even with inflation this may not sound like much, Mudgett vaccinated pretty much everyone in Moore's Fork, so it netted him about $1,000 or nearly $30,000 today. That would not fly in America today. People can get COVID vaccines for free and they're like, nope! I guess back in the day, people took this more seriously because they could see smallpox ravaging people. Whereas today, people just die in hospitals and we don't see them. Maybe we should put them all out in public. No, let's not do that. That would be weird. But I mean, it's like, I don't want my kid to be vaccinated against polio. It's like, how about we take you to see some people who have polio and see how they feel about that?
Oh, you don't want to get the vaccine because you're scared? Ma'am, you have Botox. You have a BBL. You don't care about the toxic waste they put in your butt?
Shall we? The townsfolk were not impressed to find out that Mudgett had charged them for no reason, and from that point forward, he was persona non grata. One day, a man named Mr. Steele arrived in Mudgett's doctor's office. Steele was accompanied by a dying soldier. Steele explains that the man was dying a premature death because a bullet had been lodged in his torso years ago and had not been removed. However, the US Army doctors claimed the former soldier was dying of malaria instead. Those are two quite different problems. What this meant was that if the soldier died of malaria rather than a bullet, the soldier's family would not get a pension payout. Ah, really? They take away his pension because he wasn't killed by like something from a war? How about just novel idea here? When people have a pension, we pay it anyway. I like that idea. After the soldier died, Mudgett performed an autopsy on the man and discovered that the soldier had indeed died from an old bullet. Mudgett even removed 2 of the shattered ribs from the corpse as proof, but Mudgett refused to turn the evidence over to Steele unless he was paid a substantial share of the army payout that was due to go to the soldier's grieving family. Steele told Mudgett to get stuffed and fortunately managed to prove his case to the US Army by other means. Mudgett kept the soldier's ribs. Good for you, telling him to f*** off. By the autumn of 1885, Mudgett owed his landlord over $1,000 in rent, or over $30,000 today. Oh my god, landlord, what are you doing? Kick him out of the house. I know today it's like really hard. If someone like stops paying you rent, at least I think this is how it is in the US. I don't know how it is in America, but it's really hard to get rid of a tenant. And it makes sense because, I mean, sometimes it makes sense. If they owe you like 30 grand, maybe it doesn't, and they're an obvious fraudster. But when a landlord stops getting paid, the landlord just loses money, but the tenant loses their house. And obviously there's a little bit of a power difference there. But this is 1885. Surely you'd just be like, get the f*** out of my house. And they'll be like, there's tenant protection laws. It's like, it's 1885, mate. What are you going to do? This is the past. It's the worst, remember? Now get out of my house or pay me my 30 grand. So he promptly borrowed the money to purchase a train ticket to Chicago and left town.
What a surprise.
You had the landlord comes knocking the door. Hey mate, just to remind you, you owe me $30,000 in 2022 money. And you're like, yeah, no, I'm definitely going to pay that. Listen, I've got to go see a friend in Chicago, which is really far away. Can you lend me the money for the train? Yeah, sure. No worries. We'll just add it to the 30 grand in 2022 dollars that you owe me. So, I mean, maybe this landlord deserved it. Mudgett drifted around Chicago in the winter.
Yeah, it sounds like he's just retarded. Don't know what else to say. I think the landlord's just dumb. He might have pulled an Australian there.
Of 1885, living large and quickly spending his money on women, sharp suits, luxury apartments.
Oh god, I just realized I have to buy 2 more super magnet books.
And expensive champagne. It was also around this time Mudgett started wearing his signature high-crown bowler hat. When Mudgett was broke, he took a large wagon and headed east again. He got as far as Norristown, Pennsylvania. Running low on cash, Mudgett had to sell.
Yep, I'm gonna be honest. Whatever the fuck your name is, Jack, you got at least, and you have to wait till next year before you can even try to shit talk America. I'm gonna be real. Yup, you gotta wait till next year. Not after that breakdancer. You gotta wait until at least next year to be on an even playing field with us. Sorry. I truly am sorry, but no. I'm gonna just stop you right there.
Sell off all of his possessions, his wagon, and both of his horses in order to buy food. He visited a local police station, saying that he was going to kill himself because he was starving. The police took pity on him, gave him a bit of grub, and then let him sleep in a prison cell while he found a job. I hope he became familiar with that prison cell, because I think that's where you're going to go. I mean, in the end. Well, we know it because he wrote his autobiography in prison, didn't we? Spoiler alert. Due to his medical experience, they found a job for him as an orderly in the local...
But yeah, good. Now I have all these accounts up here. The only mastery they gotta get left is digging and fishing. I don't care about. And these 2 I used on Fruit Mastery 99. Yeah, she ruined any chance for y'all to even dare try to shit talk America. Sorry. She ruined everything for y'all. For any chance for y'all, at least. Oh, wait, hold on.
Insane asylum. By all...
No, it's just a thing. No. It's just like, hey, you can fish, and it's like, okay. That's literally it. It's just you can get huges from it. It's just like a little side thing. It's really just, like, I feel like they're gonna revamp it one day. So I would say it probably is good to possibly have it a little higher up. But at the end of the day, it's not something that if you aren't max in the game, and you feel like there's nothing else, there's literally no. Like, even right now, I don't think there's really a point for me to even try to do it. It's retarded.
all accounts, Mudgett did a decent job, except he was no longer calling himself Mudgett. He told the police and his employers that his name was Herman Howard and that he was from Texas and his father had been a colonel in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. Mr. Howard, aka Mudgett, detested his work in the insane asylum. To be fair, that is not unreasonable. In the late 19th century, madhouses were extremely unpleasant places. They were little more than jails to lock up the mentally unwell, giving them little to no treatment, medication, or palliative care. They were underfunded, unsanitary, and the patients were kept in cruel and deprived conditions, yelling, babbling, fighting, and self-harming in an environment that was functionally a fresh...
Honestly, I have never thought about it that way, But if you really do think about it, at the end of the day, it's over. Amen, brother. Amen. Masked owl.
Fresh pit of hell. I can imagine this must have been a disturbing life, even for a member of staff like Mudgett. Writing in his autobiography, Mudgett said, quote, "So terrible was it that for years afterwards, even now sometimes, I see their faces in my sleep." He disappeared from the Norristown Asylum in early 1886 after working there for only 2 months. Yeah, it sounds like a bit too much like hard work for him, doesn't it? He'd probably just rather con or steal and stuff like that. That's more up his street. Or murder children. Also a possibility. The birth of Dr. Holmes. Mudgett arrived in the city of Minneapolis in the spring of 1886, where he began working as a clerk for a local...
Also, the chances for this huge, don't even think about getting it. It's like 1 in 100 million. Like, just give up the thought. I'm gonna be real. The only reason I'm doing it is because it has better stat pets, right? Not mistaken. Yeah, let me check real quick. Pretty sure it just has... Wait, no. That would be better. Yeah, why the fuck am I over there? Never mind. I don't know that huge. Yeah, it usually is slower.
Pharmacist Dr. Hyman. By this time, Mudgett was operating under the pseudonym of Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, and so was born his most notorious alias, H. H. Holmes, the name by which he would be known to history. Although some early accounts say he chose the name from Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had not yet published the first of those stories. Instead, it would appear that Holmes chose the name entirely at random. While living in Minneapolis, H. H. Holmes met Myrta Belknap, a 24-year-old woman who worked as a clerk in a store that sold sheet music. Not long after, Holmes proposed marriage. Shocking! I knew exactly what was coming. There's no record of this marriage on the books, and it's likely that Holmes confected the ceremony, making it seem more legal than it really was. Another good word there, confected. For like makeup. One word instead of two. Mwah! Nevertheless, Holmes made a half-hearted attempt to secure a divorce from his legal wife, Clara. In those days, there was no such thing as a no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce. Does this mean like where people just want to split up because they're just not happy together anymore?
Yeah, that whole thing, a no-fault divorce is fucked up, and there's a lot of dudes that want it to happen. Like, Project 2025 strictly talks about it. A no-fault divorce. What do you mean? Dog, just grinding. Put on your diamond farming setup and get to work. Chop chop. Biatch. Sorry, I didn't mean it. I did.
Weird that you couldn't do that. Someone
Oh no.
had to make an error.
I don't know why they don't have global event gifts anymore. I wish they'd bring them back. Kinda miss them now.
It's like we just don't like each other anymore. Isn't that okay? It's like, if it's someone you're not married to, you just break up. Even if it's a friend, you're like, well, you just don't hang out anymore, do you? But if you're married to them, you have some contracts you just gotta keep together. That's some...
Oh yeah, but like I was saying, yeah, a no-fault divorce basically they want to get rid of the fact, for like, it's like, what is it? Oh, I don't want to be with this man anymore. Another person like, and the dude's like, nah, I'm good. You can't get divorced. Yeah, we finally got the two from my friend Tech.
Bullshit right there, which is obviously will change because now people get divorced all the time, and it's awesome. I mean, it would be better if everyone just lived happily ever after, but obviously that's not a reality.
Yeah, my friend, I talked about this before. My friend Tech played, and that he's the one that is borrowing my stuff on Skyblock. I haven't tested it. Yeah, Technology Alt 1 and Technology Alt 2.
So,
no, that's fine. Before you do, I have some extra screenshots I need you to bring up there with him too. It's one from this the Mobidid guy that he got 5 bill earlier, I think. I don't know. It says here he don't really got it like that because he's poor. He should have gotten 10, but I don't know if I've yeah, I mean, who is him? Like, literally, who is that? Irrelevant. Nobody knows him. Bozo. I'm glad you agree, man. I've literally been saying that all day.
when Holmes filed these papers...
Ah, he's a shitter. I think he ever played Skyblock. Good at the game to be able to hack in it.
He claimed that Clara had been sleeping with a man named J.M. Downer while the married couple lived together in Ann Arbor in 1883. So not only there's no fault divorces, so he just has to trash his wife's reputation.
I mean, this guy was a real jerk.
When Holmes found out the divorce papers says, he promptly threw Clara out and took on sole custody of their son, Robert. In actual fact, Clara had taken Robert when she walked out, and Holmes...
I mean, it don't matter. He's too irrelevant for anybody to care about me. But...
in 1883, after years of domestic abuse. For 3 years, Clara had been living with Robert back in New Hampshire, making a living as a dressmaker. Holmes was not part of their lives. In fact, by the time Holmes married Martha Belknap, he had largely cut off contact with his mother and father as well. After a few years of silence, the Mudgett family has pretty much given him up for dead. Nothing came of the divorce proceedings, which stalled because no witness could support Holmes's claim of adultery, and it's highly
like that
likely that
mob
this
guy,
man,
he's a
J.M.
whole
Downer,
fucking
with
joke.
whom
He's
Clara was
loser.
allegedly sleeping...
Not about the loser part, but... I ain't mean it. Probably not. Yeah, now I got, 2 accounts that basically have every game. They have all the important ones. The only one I think I need to get each of these accounts, though, would be like... What is it? I think both of them need rainbowing. They need, magic eggs, I think, and, wow. They haven't added any way to get more uses event. How'd you do that?
Did not exist. Most absurdly, Clara was never informed of the divorce lawsuit at all. In 18, yeah, but this was the past. I mean, you could go somewhere else and the paperwork doesn't track, and I don't know, it just gets lost. It's back in the day, there weren't big centralized.
I don't know, because I'm still deciding what I'm gonna do. Oh, we are never having an event like that again. You just go ahead and give up that idea, Buster. That shit will never happen again. Glad I can do the, fucking, whatever this shit is. I can do daycare easier, so now I'm gonna actually... Upgrade enchant. Diamonds. Wait, no. No, not that. Or actually, yeah, diamonds. Lucky eggs. Treasure hunter. Diamonds. What do I need? Eggs, treasure hunter.
Databases allowing everyone to know what's going on all the time. Or Facebook. In May 1886, Holmes and Murter moved to Chicago. On July the 15th, they passed a 3-day exam to get a pharmacy license in order to work at a drugstore. He began working at a local pharmacy owned by Dr. Elizabeth Holton, a fellow medical grad from the University of Michigan that same month. When Holton fell pregnant with her second daughter in early 1887, she sold the drugstore to Holmes, and while the...
Oh, good shit. Here's... What do you mean? Once I finish, like, all my accounts except for these two, obviously, are max rank now. Like, I don't need to do anything else.
Compulsive liar delayed paying for a while, Holton actually managed to get him to cough up without too much difficulty, or resorting to a lawsuit. Kind of a rarity in today's story. He actually paid for something. At the beginning of 1887, Holmes also purchased a vacant lot across the street. This 63rd Street location in the Chicago suburb of Englewood was the future site of his notorious...
Oh, it eventually will start not doing as much, but it gradually just keeps, to be honest.
Or his murder castle. Over the course of 1887, Holmes took out loans and sought investors for the building, which was to house shops on the first floor, rented apartments on the second floor, and a hotel on the third floor. He's seeking out investors. Again, this is like, if there was any sort of paper trail today, people were like, wait, isn't this the guy who keeps running away and changing his name because he can't pay his debts? But in the past, people were like, yeah, sure, I'll give you some more money, old Holmesy, no worries. Holmes chose a good time to get involved in real estate as the population of Englewood exploded from just 2,000 people in 1880 to 50,000 in 1890 due to the suburb's absorption into the wider city of Chicago. Construction of the castle began in August 1887. The first and second floors were in operation within months, and Holmes moved into one of the apartments with his second wife, Murta, in early 1888. Holmes also set up another drugstore on the first floor, selling the Holton business he'd purchased across the street. The hotel on the first floor wouldn't be finished for another 5 years. After construction was underway, Holmes transferred ownership of the property to his wife, Myrta, and then to Myrta's mother, Lucy, so Holmes could avoid having the building repossessed when creditors and investors came looking for him for the money. I don't think it works like that, at least it doesn't anymore. It's like, no, I used all of your investor money to buy this object, and then I gave the object to someone else, so it's now their object. And that person happens to be legally my wife. So what's half of hers is mine. I'm pretty sure the investors
Wait, no,
could
I'm
be like,
retarded. What am I doing?
I'm sorry, it doesn't work like this. You go to the bank, you take out a mortgage to buy a house, you give the house to your wife, and you're like, what are you going to do about it, bank? It's like, well, we're going to sue you. I'm bankrupt. And then your wife keeps the house and you live in it. That doesn't happen. It doesn't work like that. Indeed, Holmes never paid iron and steel a dime for the materials used to construct the building, nor did he pay the architect who designed the damn thing. When Aetna Iron and Steel sued Holmes in 1888, he claimed he was not liable since he was not the property's owner. His mother-in-law was. When that didn't shake off the lawsuit, good, as expected, Holmes claimed that one of the steel beams Aetna provided was too short, thus negating the entire contract. Again, your understanding of the law is not very good. This was just one of dozens of lawsuits levied against Holmes in the building, with numerous pissed-off investors, co-owners, construction workers, and furniture manufacturers looking for their money. The castle had a large hidden compartment between the first and second floors over the top of the drugstore, where Holmes's employees sometimes slept overnight. Okay, the past. Where are you sleeping? Just at work, just on the floor. The castle also had a hidden staircase that could be accessed from a trapdoor in the bathroom on the second floor. There were also numerous hidden compartments scattered all over the building, where Holmes would hide furniture and various other items from repo men who came to take them once Holmes inevitably failed to pay for them. The most famous story of this kind was when a repo man came to possess a large safe that Holmes had bought on credit. When the men arrived, Holmes said, "Go ahead and take the safe, but I warn you not to damage the building." The problem was there was no way to remove the safe without tearing down the walls in which it had been embedded. The repo men were forced to leave it, and the safe company had to write it off as a bad debt. This is like the stupidest rip-off ever. Holmes' most common swindle was to buy goods on credit, sell them for cash, and not pay back the creditors. Holmes also really liked cheating bike sellers. He'd rent a bike or two from a store, sell them, and not return them. Evidently, Holmes also bought the same thing with stores that sold collectible wind-up music boxes, which was something of a fad at the time. From 1886 to 1894, over 60 lawsuits, in 8 years, 60 lawsuits, were opened against H.H. Holmes. Some of them were the simple act of borrowing $50 and not paying it back. A more extreme lawsuit was levied against him by a man named Herman Haff for $10,000, or that's a lot of money in today's money, $315,000 in today's money. For Holmes allegedly leading the man up the primrose path with various investments in real estate and agriculture. Dude, that is savage. In 1887, Holmes began advertising the sale of high-quality mineral water that was healthier than tap water and had various healing properties. Let me guess, it's just tap water. Holmes claimed he had access to this water via a, quote, artisan well. Holmes sold bottles of the stuff which had a strange bluish colour. In reality, Holmes had merely tapped into the water mains of the castle, stealing from the water company without paying for it. The water itself was discoloured by a cloud of millions of copper particles floating in it, which had chipped off from the building's cheap plumbing. Far from being a healthy mineral water, if you drank too much of it, you'd wind up with serrated gut and permanent damage to your kidneys and liver. Holy shit. So now are you selling tap water? Which there was I made a video about it, a famous story of Coca-Cola who launched Dasani water in the UK. And apparently bottled water in the US is often just like purified tap water or whatever. But in Europe, it's generally mineral water, like it comes from like springs and shit. And Coca-Cola
In real.
Yeah, we launched Dasani water, which is just, purified tap water in the UK. And people were like, wait, we're having none of this. It comes from like a tap in Swindon. What are you talking about? And then they were like, well, it's purified. And then people did tests and it was like less pure than the water that comes out of the tap. And it's like, okay, don't try that. But on the plus side, at least it didn't ruin your liver. Holmes also claimed he had invented a gas generator that could take a simple tank of water and turn it into natural gas, which could be then used to fuel lamps, machines, furnaces, and buildings. He solved the energy crisis. Holmes built a giant iron contraption in the basement of the castle and gave public demonstrations where he threw in a variety of chemicals which produced colourful wisps of smoke and strange smells, and indeed, the generator produced natural gas. So convincing was this display that the local gas company came to investigate it and initially offered Holmes $2,500 or $78,000 today for his invention. Yo. Yo. If I'm a gas company and someone shows me this invention, it is worth a hell of a lot more than $78,000. I'll be like, I will give you $1 billion for it. You cannot tell anyone, and then I will have you killed, and then I will destroy the invention. Or I will keep it in the company basement and we will no longer purchase Russian gas. We will just use this magical box. In reality, Holmes had secretly connected his generator to the castle's own gas pipes in order to produce the final product. Once the gas company's investigator figured this out, the deal was called off. Shocking. In 1890, Holmes set up the Warner Glass Bending Company. Oh, dude, what are you up to?
I'm an entrepreneur.
He claimed that he had been to a glass factory in New Jersey and had ferreted out their secret patented way of bending glass. Curved glass might not sound like anything special today, but back then it was relatively new. Again, Holmes built an elaborate furnace in the basement of the castle and gave public demonstrations. No one ever saw him bend glass in person, but one night he staged a scene wrapping a tiny amount of glass around the metal bar next to the furnace. The next morning, he called 2 drugstore employees downstairs who saw the glass and were duly conscripted to tell all and sundry about it. Holmes promptly conned dozens of investors for several $1,000s without producing anything for sale. In 1891, Holmes bought into the ABC Copier Company, purchasing 50% of the shares for $9,000 or $285,000 in today's money. He has conned a lot of money from a lot of people to be able to purchase that. Like, where did he get nearly 300 grand from? I mean, cons, but were they so successful? He seems a bit shit at cons. Or rather, he got the shares but never paid any money for them. Of course he didn't. Holmes said he would pay the amount in cash once a real estate deal of his went through, but then he showed up with a promissory note saying that he'd pay the amount in 1 year, and he never did. The ABC Copier Company used a newly invented technology that mixed gelatin, glycerin, and water together to produce copies of books and drawings. Unusually for one of Holmes's wheezes, the technology was actually legit. But when Holmes took charge of the company, he did not manufacture or sell very many copy machines. Yeah, why would he? It's not they invented some revolutionary device. Except they did. This is your one legit business that you stole. Instead, he mostly used the company to defraud investors out of their money and sold off the territorial rights to sell the copying machines to other salesmen. A fellow could pay $5,000 or $157,000 in today's money for the exclusive rights to sell the copy machines in a particular US state. However, if you purchased the exclusive rights to sell the machine in, say, Ohio, you could be certain that H.H. Holmes had sold off those same rights to half a dozen other men in Ohio as well. Oh my god, that must have made him a lot of money. If he's making 157 grand in today's money per state, and he's selling them to many states per person, there's like 50 states, right? So how many? That's a lot. I mean, there's not going to be 50 states back then, but it's still a lot of money, okay? Through these various schemes and more legitimate forms of revenue, Holmes was grossing an estimated average of $48,000 a year, or $1.5 million annually, while sitting in...
It was so easy finesse back then. What the fuck? Be like, yo, I got this machine. Basically, it's gonna, whenever you shit, it's gonna clean your ass after you shit. And all it is just hold on. Bro.
In a jail cell in 1895, Holmes himself claimed that he was pulling in $300,000 or $9.5 million a year. Yeah, but it sounds like you made that one up, didn't you? But I think we could take the latter figure with a big, massive grain of salt. Yes.
Oh wait, shit, I just realized, how much does that make mastery pots, what they did today? How much does that make mastery pots? Oh. Yeah, I figured they wouldn't go down. That'd be dumb.
Death comes to Englewood. On July the 4th, 1889, Myrta gave birth to a daughter, Lucy Theodate Holmes. The girl's first name was taken from Holmes's mother-in-law and a middle name from his own mother. But back in New Hampshire, Theodate Mudgett had no idea whether her son was still alive.
That's a terrible name. You hate your children. Theodate? What, you just trying to do a different type of name of Theodore? Oh, stupid ass.
Didn't know he was married, and the old woman didn't know she had a granddaughter for another 6 years. She only discovered that bit of news around the same time she found out her son was a murderer. Surprise! You'd be like, listen, old lady, we got some good news and some bad news. Which one do you want first? That your son's a murderer, but he had a daughter.
Well, that's a relief, I must say.
Oh wait, shit. Guys, anybody that's here, I just remembered, make sure that you re-up on your boost. Make sure you get your boost from over here. I forgot, you need to go back over here every day and make sure you get more of the boost. I don't know if you earn money, or I don't know if you earn these dollars anymore in the new area, but you know what I mean? Anybody here?
Yeah, greater than.
I mean, it does, yeah. I mean, it gives you boosts for 24 hours. Gives you 3 separate boosts for 24 hours. See? You get a 5% diamond boost, you get a 15% chance drop boost, and a 100% egg luck boost.
On April the 18th, 1891, John Zabruel stepped off the train at the station.
How do you get the bucks from playing in the last area of the other place?
Right outside the castle on 63rd Street. De Brule was an investor in the castle and part owner of the building, who, like many investors, was in a protracted legal dispute with Holmes over thousands of dollars in revenues and investment returns that De Brule was owed. Suddenly, right in view of the drugstore, De Brule collapsed on the sidewalk and began having a likely epileptic fit. Holmes dashed out of the drugstore ostensibly to assist the convulsing man. An eyewitness states that upon reaching Dr. Brule, Holmes poured a vial of dark liquid down his throat. Moments later, the man was dead. That is extremely suspicious. The next 2 deaths at the castle, just brush that aside, it's cool, no worries, were, to put it lightly, troubling. Back in September 1889, shortly after.
By the way, Mob, remember to re-up on your boost from that other area, remember? Remember to get your boost up from the previous area.
After the birth of Holmes's daughter, a man named Ned Connor, a jeweler from out of state, is.
Now, my thing is, I don't know if you get any of the bucks in this new area. I would presume not. Or maybe you do. Who knows? Let me do this. Item notification.
Her 33-year-old wife Julia and their 4-year-old daughter Pearl moved into an apartment at the castle. Ned began working at the jewelry counter at the drugstore. Julia and Ned fought bitterly and constantly, at one point with Julia threatening to take poison and kill herself. Meanwhile, Holmes got Julia
Yo, W manipulation. Yeah, yes sir.
Working as a cashier in the drugstore and began having an affair with her almost immediately. In January 1890, Holmes convinced Ned to buy his drugstore, having cooked the books and inflated the store's revenue to look more profitable than they really were. MO again. Holmes also persuaded Ned to take out a bunch of loans and hand the money to him, which the conman promised to swiftly repay. And shockingly, he never did. In the meantime, Ned and Julia filed for divorce. In March 1890, Ned...
And even if you don't get it, those are $107. That's a good drop. Like, even if that doesn't work, though, I mean, that's fine, to be honest. Because, like I said, I guarantee if, matter of fact, let me do that test real quick. So it seems like in the new area, you don't get it. We're just gonna go ahead and say that for the time being. I'm gonna send this account over there. On.
Informed Holmes that he was divorcing his wife and leaving Chicago, and that he'd like to sell the drugstore back to Holmes since it wasn't very profitable. Holmes agreed to buy it back at a cutthroat price. Julia stayed on in Chicago, working at the drugstore and continuing to sleep with Holmes. Even convinced Julia to pay him $1,942, or $61,000 in today's money, for her to become a part owner of the drugstore, which the now divorced drugstore cashier had agreed to pay in installments. Naturally, the story of becoming part owner was a lie, and Julia was never legally made any such thing on paper. He's quite a good con man. Like, at first, he didn't seem very good at it, but now he's really raking in the money. Like, his con man game improved, which you'd expect it to when you practice at something. Julia and Holmes kept up their affair through 1890 and 1891, with Holmes feigning a paternal interest in Julia's 5-year-old daughter Pearl, whom Holmes allowed to play out in the streets of Chicago until well after dark. That seems like good parenting right there. In 1891, Holmes sold the drugstore again, this time to a fellow named A.L. Jones. Before the sale went through, though, Holmes saw most of the store's remaining stock to himself, hid it upstairs in the castle before selling it off privately behind Jones's back. Holmes retained ownership of the castle, or rather, his mother-in-law did. As an aside, in early 1891, H.H. Holmes was trying to have sex with Ned Connor's 20-year-old sister, Gertrude Connor, who had moved into Chicago.
Gertrude? Ew, nasty bitch.
From Iowa, but Gertie wasn't having any of it.
Gertie? Why would you parenthesize her fucking name to Gertie? You're evil.
And she rebuffed him, probably because he smelled bad, had a weird moustache, had the squinty eye. Well, I don't understand why this guy's he's so successful. Like, at conning people, he looks weird, he smells bad. I'd be like, oh, dude, go away. And also, women love him. It's weird. Gertie moved back to Iowa to look after her dying mother. In July, it was actually Gertie herself who wound up dying a premature death from heart disease. According to multiple accounts, Holmes thought that this was hilarious.
Sorry, that's not funny. It's not funny. Why would he laugh, dog? That's not funny.
Dude, your sense of humor needs to work, my guy. Again, but it's like this. It makes him sound so unattractive. Like, humor's so important. It's such a nice thing. And then this guy's just like, he's weird. It's creepy. In September 1891, Holmes sued Julia for the remainder of the money she owed him for a false share of the drugstore business. Holmes assured Julia that the lawsuit was merely a formality, but Julia wasn't pleased and became increasingly distressed. She started to express her doubts about Holmes to various friends and acquaintances. On Christmas Eve, 1891, Julia helped some neighbors set up a Christmas...
Wait, how much do I have now? Wait. Ooh. Wait. Time out. They have to add it to where you can get the millionaire bucks from the new area, right? No way they don't do that, right? Because if so, that ain't good. Or if that's the case in general, this is a FYI to everyone. To go buy. Go buy some.
Christmas tree in their apartment. She arranged to meet them the next day and never showed up. Uh-oh. Another resident in the building, Mrs. Crow, said that she thought she'd seen Julia heading out on Christmas morning, and that was the last time anyone reported seeing Julia or Pearl Connor alive. Uh-oh. Julia and Pearl were expected in Davenport, Iowa on December the 31st to attend the wedding of Julia's sister. They never showed up. Julia's apartment remained empty for 5 months. In May 1892, Holmes rented out the place to the Doyle family. When Holmes was showing Mrs. Doyle the place, the woman noted that the dining room table still had dirty plates on it. She also noticed the night clothing of a woman and a small girl on the floor. The bed sheets were in a disarray and had not been made.
Time to stock up, lads. Stock up, lads. Stock up. No, this is a... Maybe it might be an investment. I'm not sure. Because I just realized at the moment. I hope that person dies in like a fire. Like, kills them and devastates their family. Well, the thing is, I just realized that what is it, the millionaire boost shit? I just realized that you can't earn millionaire bucks. What do I have here? Thank you.
Made. Mrs. Doyle also
Hold
saw
on,
a
I might
doll
be
known to
retarded.
pearls. Holmes quickly kicked the doll onto the bed. On top of the dresser, Mrs. Doyle saw a bunch of women's cosmetics. The drawers were still full of clothes. Couple around this house if you want to move in, it's just not tidying up. Listen, mate, the number of houses I've looked at, like, you know, for renting or buying stuff, and you just go and it's like, you're trying to sell your house and you couldn't have tidied up just a little bit. Or you're trying to rent this place and you couldn't have phoned up the tenants and be like, yo, less dishes in the sink, guys. Because you're like, this is horrible. I don't want to live here. At this point, a slightly uneasy Mrs. Doyle inquired after the previous tenant. Holmes told her Julia had left suddenly to stay with a dying sister in Davenport, Iowa. Mrs. Doyle immediately thought to herself that no woman would leave for a trip, however, suddenly without taking at least a few of the toiletries which I saw on the dresser. Throughout 1892, Holmes continued to talk about Julia and Pearl as if they were still alive and even feigned attempts to locate them once it was clear they were missing. In October 1892, Holmes wrote Julia's mother asking her whereabouts. The mother wrote back saying that she did not even know Julia was missing, and now she was extremely worried and upset. Surprise, surprise. Oh, she's buried in the walls or in the basement or wherever. Oh, god damn. Ned Connor, the ex-husband, didn't really care about Julia's disappearance or ask about his daughter Pearl. He merely assumed that a vindictive person like Julia was trying to keep him from seeing the little girl. That's sad. Holmes admitted in confidence to his lawyer that he had killed Julia Connor while he was performing an illegal abortion on her. He did not go into detail about why he also killed Julia's daughter Pearl. Dude, that is f***ed up. It's like, how did she die? I killed her when she was having an illegal abortion. And what about daughter, though? Oh, yeah, I killed her, too. Just, you know. Dude. Either the abortion story is true and Holmes then murdered Pearl because she could incriminate him, or else Holmes murdered both Julia and Pearl simultaneously because his relationship with Julia had gone sour, or she threatened to expose his crimes. I absolutely think it's that. I don't think there was any illegal abortion. I just think he murdered them because he's a f***ing sicko. According to Holmes's later MO, he likely poisoned the mother and daughter, stripped them naked, dismembered and burned the bodies before disposing of the remains. This accords with Julia and Pearl's bedclothing being seen on the floor of their apartment and the rest of their clothes being in drawers. This also accords with the fact that years later, when police were digging up the basement of the castle, they found the charred bones of a girl, the limbs, head and torso broken into segments, estimated to be between the ages of 6 and 10. Pearl Connor would have been 6 at the time of her death. In May 1982, 5 months after the disappearance of Julia and Pearl Connor, a young blonde woman by the name of Emmeline Segrand began working for Dr. H.H. Holmes, Chicago's foremost entrepreneur and real estate developer, at his office at the castle. Not long afterwards, Emmeline began having an affair with Holmes. How can the women can't resist him and his stinky body? She did not live at the castle, but rented a series of flats down the street, never staying in one place for too long, at Holmes's instruction. One of Emmeline's landladies commented that she was often upset in the evening, staying out to quite late. Emmeline replied that a gentleman friend of hers named Mr. Belknap would take her out in his carriage. Belknap was the maiden name of Holmes's wife, Myrta, who at this point was living in the Chicago suburb of Wilmette with a daughter, Lucy, and also Holmes when he wasn't working or sleeping at the castle. Okay, dude, what the f***?
You don't understand. This guy is a psychopath.
According to witnesses, Emmeline Segrand was infatuated with Mr. Belknap, would talk about him endlessly, and speak of how he's always buying her flowers and little presents, or taking her to the theatre, or going with her on scenic bike rides. Holmes, in turn, told some people that Emmeline was his cousin. He and Emmeline spent most days in each other's company, eating all their meals together in Holmes's office, which they had sent up from a restaurant on the first floor of the castle. In October 1892, Emmeline's actual cousin, a dentist named B.J. Segrand, came to visit her. Emmeline told the dentist of her impending marriage to one Mr. Phelps, another pseudonym used by H.H. Holmes. Emmeline said they'd been taking music lessons together. Emmeline's story about being on the verge of marrying someone seems genuine. In a tale as old as time, it would appear that Holmes had told her that he intended to divorce Myrta and settle down with her instead. Soon after, however, it appears that Emmeline began to have a change of heart. It must become clear at some point that Holmes had no intention of divorcing his wife. Also, people started to warn her about Holmes being a womanizer and a trickster. Emmeline, on her part, seemed to take heed and regularly went out of her way, asking people what they thought of Holmes. Meanwhile, she was rumored to be pregnant with Holmes's child. On December 6, 1892, Emmeline told a friend that she was going to spend Christmas with her family in Lafayette, Indiana. Her friend chided her not to leave Chicago permanently because, quote, Dr. Holmes could never get along without you. After a moment's reflection, Emmeline said quietly but with conviction, he could if he had to. This was the last time that anyone saw her. Okay, so she could have equally actually just left, or
I must say she is dead.
she could have been totally buried in his basement. Brilliant. On December 7th, 1892, H.H. Holmes printed some wedding announcement cards which proclaimed Emmeline Segrand had married a Robert Phelps. He then sent them to Emmeline's friends and family, including the girl's parents. Nobody had any idea who this Phelps fellow really was. When some of them asked Holmes, he replied, "Oh, he's a fellow Miss Segrand met somewhere. I don't know anything about him except that he is a traveling man." On December 8th, 1892, Holmes printed a wedding announcement in a Lafayette newspaper, again announcing Emmeline's marriage to this Robert Phelps. In one passage, what is this guy up to? Why is the trick he's trying to play here? In one passage of the announcement, Emmeline's move to Chicago is described as where she met her fate. This was meant to be reference to Emmeline meeting her husband. Oh my god, he means like fate, like she's dead. But one suspects Holmes took some sick pleasure at the phrase's double meaning. Emmeline, indeed, had come to Chicago and met her fate. Dude, don't subtly hint at your crimes. Bad idea. Don't do it. Don't ever subtly hint at your crimes. Just don't mention your crimes. When Emmeline's panic-stricken father wrote H.H. Holmes looking for his daughter, Holmes told him that Emmeline and Phelps had decided to move to England. A few months later, Emmeline's mother received a trunk full of her daughter's clothing with a typewritten note saying that Phelps had enough money to buy her new clothes and she was jetting off to a new life in Europe. Why would you send...
Yeah, like I said, they could absolutely tomorrow, they could easily tomorrow be like, oh, never mind guys, our bad, we're gonna make it to where you can, you know, earn these in the new area, our fault. They could easily do that, but just in case they don't, I'm gonna buy like 100 mil worth. Because imagine they don't. Like, really. Wouldn't make sense for what? Yeah, but it doesn't even feel like you can get the millionaire bucks from the, well, I need to buy those too. Fuck it. Like I said, tomorrow they could easily just be like, you know what? Our bad. We're gonna make it to where you can get boost anywhere now. But then think about it. Imagine they don't. And I became one of the only people to know.
Send the clothes back. Just get rid of the clothes. Why would you do that? It's just asking for trouble. When Emmeline's mother opened the trunk, she saw that her daughter's clothing had just been tossed carelessly inside. There is no record of any Robert Phelps of this description ever existing, or record of a Phelps migrating from Chicago to England with Emmeline, or to any other European country for that matter. Emmeline Segran's body was never found. It was likely dismembered, cremated, and scattered like all the others.
Like I said, they're selling for $500 per, right? And I feel like whenever eventually people somewhat realize what's going, like, it's a thing, they might start stocking up, and guess what? Those prices are going to go up, and guess what? I'm going to have it. I'm going to have them to sell, if need be. Not just keep all of them, like I have been doing. I do feel like they are gonna, like, bring the bucks back up. Like, I feel like you're gonna be able to earn them somehow. What I assume at the moment is that you can only get them, but it's very rare. You know what I mean?
The Devil in the White City. As 1893 approached, Chicago citizens started to get excited about the World's Fair. World's Fairs were cool. I think there are still World's Fairs today, but they're not as cool as they used to be. Like, whenever I make videos like this, it's like there's a World's Fair. They have all like these companies making technology that they think will be the future. Stuff comes from all around the world. I think World's Fairs were awesome. I don't know why they stopped being such a cool thing. I think there was one, like, someone, I made a video and I said the same thing, and someone was like, oh, they do have a World's Fair. There's one, like, coming up in Dubai or some shit like that. And I looked at it. It just seemed to be like a bunch of corporate shilling. Like, not like cool corporate shilling. It's not like, you know, General Electric's showing up there with, like, you know, back in the day, a color television. And you're like, holy shit, it's in color. It just seemed to be kind of just lame companies with lame things. I was like, this isn't as cool as World's Fairs in the past. 6 months of exhibitions and entertainments held between May and October of that year. H.H. Holmes was no exception. He rapidly developed the third floor of the castle into a hotel to capture the bump in tourism. However, it seems Holmes had no real intention of having guests stay there. He just used the addition of a hotel to guzzle money from unwitting investors. Of course he did. Holmes bought furniture for the hotel rooms on credit and sold it without repaying. He used the cheapest materials and construction methods. One site inspector actually punctured a hole in the floor just by walking on it. Holmes sent him a bill for $75. Ultimately, the plan was to make thousands in insurance payouts by burning the whole thing down. Oh, that definitely sounds like, well, I mean, this guy's it's a crime. This guy does crimes. How is he not in prison? Using different pseudonyms, Holmes took out insurance policies with 3 separate companies in October and November of 1892. The payout ran to $100,000 or $3.5 million today. Dude, could you make it look more like you're doing an insurance scam? Why would random people take out, like, if you're not the owner of the property? Like, I don't think some random Joe Blogs can go and take out an insurance property on my house burning down. That would be insane and, like, really set a bad precedent. So how is that allowed? The design of the third floor hotel was strange. Some closets had 2 doors, allowing someone from the adjoining room to sneak into the closet and burst into the room. The walls had hidden sliding panels. The doors to some rooms were covered with wallpaper so that stolen goods could be concealed in them. In January 1893, H.H. Holmes...
Yeah, like I said, I could be wrong, right? I could absolutely be wrong. But at least I'm set.
hired Minnie Williams as secretary and stenographer. Let me guess, they start sleeping together. Minnie was 28 years old and had been orphaned along with her siblings in childhood. As the eldest of her siblings, in 1870, Minnie inherited a large ranch from her uncle, valued at $10,000 or $342,000 in today's money, in Fort Worth, Texas. Minnie was described... so they could buy a large ranch for $342,000. Seems really cheap. Minnie was described as a brilliant conversationalist, a good musician, and graceful and elegant, but not beautiful. She was also described as standoffish around boys, and to use the phrase of the time, a man-hater, which was sometimes used by Victorians as code for lesbian. Minnie left Texas, studying to become an expert in elocution at the Boston Conservatory from 1886 to 1890. Elocution is the study of formal pronunciation and grammar, something important for society ladies at the time. During her stay in the North, Minnie made the acquaintance of H.H. Holmes, and allegedly even had a photograph taken with him. Wait, so she starts working for him and he doesn't sleep with her? It's a bit weird, isn't it? Normally he does that. In 1891, Minnie mortgaged her Fort Worth property for $6,000. I wonder whose idea that was. And used the money to start a theatrical company. It quickly went bankrupt. Minnie then spent a couple of years traveling the US as an actress. Oh wait, it wasn't his idea. I'm so off base with all of this. I was like, why isn't he sleeping with her? Isn't he the one who's told her to mortgage this property and then he's taken all the money? No! Rumour has it that Minnie fancied herself the vaudeville version of Meryl Streep, but in reality was not very good. In January 1893, she gave up on her acting dream and began to work for Holmes in Chicago. It was at this time that Minnie began to have an affair.
Spoke too soon.
She had an affair with H.H. Holmes. This may sound strange since Minnie would have rumoured lesbian, but it was the 19th century, and marriage to a wealthy doctor turned real estate mogul offered Minnie an escape from the humdrum life as a penniless secretary.
What the fuck is that? What? A ranch.
Surely you go to work there. He had 60 lawsuits in like 8 years. He owes everyone money. He's conning people. He's trying to rip off an insurance company. Surely at some point you're working there, and by the time the like 19th bill collector has come that morning, you're like, maybe he's not as successful as I think he is. I guess not. Like, how? Holmes, of course, was still married to Myrta at the time, along with, lest we forget, Clara Mudgett back in New Hampshire. Wait, I thought they got divorced with the like, he said she was having an affair or she left or something. Oh, who knows? This guy's just full of lies. In spring of 1893, Minnie wrote to her sister Nanny saying she'd become engaged to a Dr. Harry Gordon. Minnie knew Holmes' real name, but used an alias when discussing him in order to prevent a scandal from breaking out. Minnie evidently expected Holmes to divorce Myrta and throw his lot with her instead. In March 1893, Minnie sold a portion of her ranch in Fort Worth for $2,528, that's $86,000 today, and passed the money to Holmes. Again, spoke too soon. You knew he was getting his money on that ranch, his hands on that ranch money, didn't you? It just had to happen. He also took out a huge loan in Minnie's name. Minnie later signed over the deed to her property for two homes for $1. How? He used the alias Alexander Bond. On June the 7th, Holmes and Minnie moved into an apartment on Wrightwood Avenue in Lincoln Park, registered...
Lincoln Park. I become so... Sorry.
as Mr. and Mrs. Gordon. There's no record of a wedding. Around the same time, Minnie's sister Nanny came to stay with them and enjoy the World's Fair. In a letter to their Aunt Lucy in Mississippi, dated July the 4th, 1893, Nanny Williams said she was enjoying herself in Chicago and that she liked Dr. Gordon.
Yeah, I'm glad... What did I just send? History to just now. Did I send shit to... I think I did, right? Maybe. Probably not.
Very much. She told her aunts that tomorrow they'd be going to Milwaukee, then to Maine, by way of the St. Lawrence River. Then they would go to New York, where Nanny would look into studying art. Then they planned to sail to Germany by way of London and Paris.
The Fruit 99 is a lifesaver, and I'm glad that they were able to get it. For, like I said, I think it's cool that they were able to do. Or I think that 99 potion thing was.
Paris. Nanny Williams said, "If I like it there, I will stay and study art. If not, I will return to New York in time to make you a visit before beginning my work studying there." Brother Harry says, "You never trouble anymore about me, financially or otherwise, and his sister will see to me. I hope our hard days are over." End quote. There is some implication that Holmes actually forged this letter, but it's also possible that he convinced Nanny into thinking the road trip plans were legitimate. The last time anyone saw Minnie and Nanny Williams alive was on July the 5th, 1893. The method of murder is unknown, but given Holmes's MO, the sisters were likely poisoned, dismembered, cremated, and then scattered. Their remains were never found. Joseph Oker, landlord at the Wrightwood Apartments, saw the two sisters walking down Seminary Avenue in the morning. Holmes murdered both of them that night. On July the 6th, several property transactions were made in Minnie's name. The same day, Holmes took out another loan in Minnie's name for $6,250, $214,000 today. How is he not like? How are they not like looking at this? Like these people disappear and die, and he's got all this money from them, and the police are like, seems fine. How? On July the 7th, Joseph Oker found that the Wrightwood Apartments had been vacated, showing signs of a hasty exit. A steamer trunk full of Nanny Williams' clothing was abandoned at a Chicago shipping depot, and it was not claimed for more than a year until the police came sniffing around. After the murder, Holmes moved Murta, his daughter Lucy, and his mother-in-law into the house he'd built in the Chicago suburb of Wilmette. This house was actually registered in the name of Minnie Williams. Murta had no idea she was living in a house owned by her husband's slain former mistress. Good lord. A month after the double murder, Holmes met his next target at the World's Fair. Ms. Georgiana.
Holy shit. Yeah, I'm glad he killed her. What the fuck? Yeah, kill her again. Kill her 3 times.
Yoke. The Infernal Castle. As the Chicago World's Fair carried on from the 1st of May to October the 30th, the hotel at the castle continued to not do business. The hotel was not listed in travel literature. The rooms were constructed so shoddily that they were barely habitable. There was no front desk, no lobby, no nightly rate.
This is probably gonna be all for nothing, to be honest. Matter of fact, let me... Yeah, it doesn't say anything, so...
Then on August the 13th, 1893, a fire broke out at the Castle Hotel. Oh my god, how convenient! Let me guess, it's overinsured. The day before, Holmes had cleared all the furniture, books, papers, and valuables from the 3rd floor. He'd also removed the doorknobs and locks, a $75 porcelain tub, and all the marble sink basins. Holmes didn't even bother to try and make the fire look accidental. He merely claimed the firebug must have snuck in and deliberately set fire to the building. As successful as Holmes had been as a con man, defrauding 3 insurance companies all at once proved to be a bridge too far. Good. Finally, all 3 companies came down on Holmes like a ton of bricks and placed him under harsh scrutiny and 24-hour investigation. They threatened to arrest him for fraud. Holmes went into hiding, moving quietly between rented apartments and several hotels. He wore fake beards and elaborate disguises. As far as we know, Holmes did not collect a cent of the insurance money. In autumn of 1893, Holmes was living in an apartment when a man named Ben Pietzol, his 5 children, and a woman who identified herself as Minnie Williams, but who in fact was Pietzol's wife, Carrie. The purpose of this ruse was to convince people that Minnie was still alive, since her name was on several important business documents related to the fraud investigation. How sometimes Julia Connor was still being sued by Holmes's creditors, despite the fact that she'd been dead for 2 years. Oh my god, this guy's created so much paperwork, they just can't keep track. There's too many lawsuits against him. It's like, you know, that Simpsons where Mr. Burns is so sick that all of the diseases can't get through that door at once, so they all get stuck. This is like Holmes with lawsuits. He's got so many lawsuits, everyone's just like, I don't know what's going on. Must be innocent. In January 1894, the Chicago police laid a trap for Holmes. One of 3 insurance companies sent a telegram to the fake address of one of Holmes's aliases, saying that the insurance payout was approved and ready for pickup. Holmes showed up the next day and was confronted by the police.
Oh, yep, see? Uses are back to normal. At least the older one. I figured that would happen. Yeah, for the most part, unless you want to grind specific mastery. Like, if you have a bunch of keys, go. Yeah. That's about it at the current moment for you, I would say. Besides that, I don't know.
This is the easiest trick ever. Holmes immediately confessed that he had been using an alias when he took out the insurance policy on the hotel, but Holmes knew that in order to be prosecuted for arson, charges need to be laid within 1 year of the event, so Holmes was determined to play for time and skipped out. Really? The limit on arson is a year? That seems low. That seems very low. H.H. Holmes immediately fled for Denver, where he planned to sue a Colorado company for the wrongful death of Minnie Williams's brother, Baldwin. Naturally, Holmes pretended that Minnie was still alive and that he represented her interests. Holmes used the alias Mr. Howard, a nod to the famous outlaw Jesse James, who had also used that alias. While in Denver, he got married for the 4th time.
I hate him.
Hey, why not? Why not? Let's get some money out of someone new. And apparently, again, the smegma dude, irresistible to the ladies. Georgina Yoke was 25 years old, tall, blonde, and considered ridiculously beautiful, except for the fact that she had somewhat oversized dinner-plate blue eyes that some witnesses, journalists, and dime novel men went so far to describe as deformities. Yes, big eyes. How hideous. She was reputedly very charismatic and would win over pretty much anyone she met. A total Stacy. What is this? Is this? I think this is. Isn't this? David lives in Australia. I think this is Australian slang. There's another Stacy and someone. I've had. It doesn't matter. According to acquaintances,
Alright,
Georgina.
I can't. Not gonna look anymore. Millionaire bucks. I probably wasted hundreds of mil on it, but at least now I don't have to worry about them anytime soon. I think I have over 300,000 of it, so we good.
Now also had a reputation for sleeping around. She had previously taught at a primary school in Indiana and had famously saved the kids from a fire before rushing back into the school to save the class dictionary. Alright. Then Georgina abruptly left teaching and went to Chicago in 1893, where she worked at a department store, then a cloakroom, then another store, before running into Holmes at the World's Fair. I just don't get it. Is Holmes is he so handsome that people can overlook his smelliness? Weird. And is also just con man and murderous nature? The fact that people hang around with him say that he's weird? The conman told Georgina that his name was H.H. Holmes, but that he inherited in property from his uncle in Fort Worth, Texas, on the strange condition that he changed his name to Henry Mansfield Howard. Georgina bought this bullshit explanation. While she might be charming and she might be beautiful, but she sure is gullible. Holmes told Georgina not to turn up at the castle since he was being stalked by Myrta, who he said was his ex-lover rather than a wife. And given Holmes's marriage to Myrta was almost certainly a sham one, well, he's kind of telling the truth. As for their relationship, it would appear that Georgina idolized Holmes and followed him rounds like a puppy dog. Holmes seems to have been genuinely smitten with Georgina as well, or at least as far as a psychopath who discards women like tissue paper is capable of forming an attachment to anyone. They were married in Denver on January 17th, 1894, with the witness being Carrie Pietzol, and she signed her name under the alias Minnie Williams. After ripping off the Colorado Mining Company for a settlement of $10,000, $342,000 today, Holmes, Georgina, and Carrie headed to Fort Worth, Texas. just slide another enormous successful con into there. There they met up with Benjamin Pietzel, who did not know he was living on borrowed time. A chloroform cocktail. Benjamin Pietzel was, for all intents and purposes, Holmes's creature. A low-rent alcoholic Dr. Watson, a two-bit con man, and an incompetent criminal. He was also, to his eternal credit, not a psychopath. And he loved his family. At the time of his death, Pietzel was 38 years old. He married his wife Carrie in 1878, and they had 5 kids together. Jeanette, always called Dessie, was 15 at the time of the death. Alice was 14, Nellie was 12, Howard was 8, and the last boy, Wharton, was only a baby. Benjamin Pietzel had been described as awkward, scrawny, with a peach fuzz moustache. He was an alcoholic, had multiple run-ins with the law. He first came to Chicago in 1888 when he was fleeing a warrant for his arrest in Galveston, Illinois. In 1890, Pietzel invented a new kind of coal bin and rented out office space in the same building as Holmes's fraudulent Warner Glass Bending Company. So this guy, he's got so much. How does he even keep up? How does he even keep track with all of the cons? He must be writing them all down in some sort of book, which he shouldn't be doing because you don't write down your crimes. Rule number 1. It was there they met. Pietzel began doing odd jobs for Holmes and quickly became his bag man. Pietzel's name first appears on paperwork for the ABC Copier Company in 1893. Is the bag man the guy who, is that the phrase for, someone who's left holding the bag? Bag man sounds like, in my mind, it was the person who robs the bank and carries the bags, but I realize it might be the person who, signs the paperwork for the con, so when the police come, it's like, no, it wasn't me, it was the Pietzel dude. He's the guy behind it. Barney in How I Met Your Mother, the sign everything and think nothing job. It's like, Barney, what do you do? I sign all the paperwork for the company that the company doesn't want to sign. It's dangerous. Holmes almost certainly had Pietzel's help in torching the castle in August 1893. After the fire, Pietzel left without telling his wife for Terre Haute, Indiana, to hide out. He was arrested there in October, carrying $6,000 to $7,000 in forged banknotes. And he's also got just a forgery thing going on the side. What? It's about $225,000 today. In November, Holmes paid off Pietzel's bail and he was released, skipping his trial. In December, Pietzel headed to Texas in advance of Holmes to sort out the Fort Worth property that belonged to the murdered Minnie Williams. Naturally, Holmes was plotting another scam. He planned to build another castle on Minnie's lands.
So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
Holmes, Georgiana, and Carrie Pietzel all arrived in Texas in late January 1894. A resident of Fort Worth describes I want to call her Georgina, but it's Georgiana. Sorry, Yoke quite favorably, but describes Holmes as an arsehole and a bit of a cad. Quote, except for habitual scowl, his face was not unattractive. That scowl, however, ruined him for me. It was a sneer at all the world. And I get that he's not unattractive, but he smells, and he does extremely well with the ladies, and he's just described as not unattractive.
Oh, it's a little cheesy, but I like it.
That's it, my dude. Holmes and Pietzel bought materials for the Fort Worth castle on credit, of course. They never paid. Of course, they initially paid construction workers for their services, but after a couple of weeks, they stopped, and most of the workers quit. Yeah, I mean, if you don't pay anyone at the beginning, you got to have that panic of, first paycheck, right? Where it's like, but once, a couple have come in, you're like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's a couple of days late. I know he's good for it. And then just gradually that comes like, oh my God, I haven't been paid in ages. I need some money. Thereafter, Holmes did each new construction job by hiring a...
I don't have to do this shit? What's wrong with it? Oh wait, no, I don't have all the shit bought. Never mind.
Different contractor each time and then never pay.
Send me what you're talking about send me the shit you're talking about on Discord.
The Fort Worth castle used the same architectural plans as the Chicago one because Holmes saw no reason to hire another architect to make something different. The building was the same, right down to the weird trapdoors and secret compartments. But this castle was never...
What the fuck is Macro Hub? See, I don't trust that already. What the fuck is that? Oh. I'll check it out. Hold on.
Used to house any businesses, tenants, or hotel guests. Meanwhile, Holmes took out tens of thousands of dollars in mortgages and loans on the buildings, pocketing the cash. The amount ran to at least $50,000 or $1.7 million in today's money. He may have even intended to burn down the building, like in Chicago, or perhaps Holmes might have learned his lesson. We shall never know. Well, he still hasn't learned his lesson because he's still doing all of these cons, which I guess he's like, well, nothing too bad happens. They just said I didn't get the insurance money. Not the end of the world. I'll just do another con with the bank instead. While in Texas, Holmes developed the habit of buying houses on credit and then selling them for cash and not repaying the original owners. And one thing you don't want to do while in Texas is with Texas ranchers. In April 1894, yeah, this is the thing. We're always like talking about how the law's going to come crashing down on him. But at some point, surely someone he cons is going to be a bit of a gangster and be like, yo, Holmes, pop, pop. And then Holmes just disappears and he's never caught because the person was not bad at crimes and now he's dead. In April 1894, Holmes operated under the alias O.C. Pratt and was indicted by the state legal system for horse theft. Meanwhile, friends of Minnie Williams, who knew the castle property was hers and that she had been missing for nearly a year, began to talk to the police. In May 1894, Holmes abandoned the Fort Worth castle and skipped town. He took Georgie to Denver and then to St. Louis, Missouri. In June 1894, Henry Mansfield Howard, a.k.a. H.H. Holmes, thank you, David. He does have so many aliases, it's getting confused. I'm getting confused like that court system gets confused. How many lawsuits? He bought a drugstore that had fallen on hard times from A.P. Guest for $850 in exchange for Holmes taking on the store's debt. A.P. Guest was paid in promissory notes and stock shares in a fraudulent company that did not really exist.
Alright, let's try it real quick. I go on Discord real quick. This real quick, in case. Couldn't show that because you called me the N-word. Let's just try to send me a rat. Macro hub. Oh. Deleter. Okay, what did you use? Multi-macro? Run. Okay, cool. So wait, hold on. I get this real quick. Alright, so I got it, multi-instance. Do I have to make these all as small as possible, or can they be this big? Why can't I change the settings? Oh wait, do I have to do it in ever? Wait, flag to use. None of these settings matter. Alright. Well, that's why you don't get my thing. Because guess what my thing does? No. See, you know what mine does that I'm doing? It drops these party boxes, and then it also spams R, aka my ultimate. Fuck you. I don't need it to do anti-AFK. Yes, because see, look, I have my macro set up where keybinds C. Whenever it does that, it automatically presses the letter C. See, look, right there. It pressed the letters. That's all I hear from you.
Yo.
Shut up, policeman.
Holmes convinced the drugstore's estate lawyer, Doran, not to file debt papers so that he could buy some initial goods on good credit. Holmes then began to sell off the goods on the down low without repaying his creditors. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, it is your bad.
Benjamin
He didn't
Pietzel's
help.
family
Fuck
arrived
you.
in St. Louis in July. It was at this point that Holmes told Carrie Pietzel about his next plan. They were going to con the Fidelity Mutual Insurance Company out of $10,000, $342,000 in today's money. I know this $10,000 is $342,000 in today's money by heart now, because it seems to be his default number. He goes for $10K, and I know what that is in 2022 dollars. By faking Benjamin Pietzel's death, Holmes would use his medical expertise to locate another corpse and make it look like Benjamin had died in a car accident. Why do I get the feeling he's probably actually going to kill off Benny rather than find a corpse? I think that's going to be the con on this one. Carrie later claimed that she was not in favour of the plan and wanted Benjamin to go straight, but who knows if she was saying this just to avoid
But I
cross-
appreciate it though, but I knew what you were doing. What you were going to say anyway. Need to do this anyway.
Execution
These
later
accounts.
Meanwhile,
Oh, by the way, Deleter, Tech finally got me his accounts.
the world was closing in on H.H. Holmes. In July 1894, Deputy Sheriff Rare of Fort Worth went to Chicago to figure out what exactly the was going on. Who was this Pratt fella? While in Chicago, Sheriff Rare discovered the identical castle and uncovered Pratt's alias, H.H. Holmes. He also found out that nobody there had seen Minnie Williams in over a year. Rare also found out that Holmes was wanted for arson in Chicago, but that the statute of limitations was running out next month. Back in St. Louis, Missouri, Holmes took out 2 separate mortgages on the drugstore. Of course he did, telling neither of the loan companies of the other loan and pocketing all of the cash. When an inspector showed up at the drugstore, he found the place closed down in the middle of the day. The inspector got suspicious, informed the drugstore's estate lawyer, who contacted the police. Holmes was arrested in St. Louis in possession of $400, $13,000 today worth of unpaid goods that he'd effectively stolen from the store. Holmes was tossed in prison for the first time. Amazingly, this is the first time, considering his absolute litany of crimes. In 1894, Holmes made bail and tried to flee. No bail! He was arrested at the train station. Holmes was thrown back behind bars, and I imagine they didn't grant him bail the second time. Why did they have bail in the past when it was so easy for these guys to just disappear? He's just like, yeah, I'm just going to go to the train station. I mean, this time he didn't escape. But people just go, they change their name, set up a new identity. No worries. What's going on? While in prison, Holmes met legendary Wild West train robber Marion Hedgepath, who was arrested by the Pinkertons in 1891 for train robbery and was sentenced to a 21-year stretch. Holmes proposed to Hedgepath that it'd cut him in for $500 of the life insurance scam he was cooking up if Hedgepath could put him in touch with a crooked lawyer. Hedgepath suggested Mr. Jephthah Howe. After 3 weeks, Georgiana managed to convince St. Louis authorities to release Holmes pending trial for $800, $27,000 in today's money, which Georgiana paid by giving a separate loan agent fake land deeds in exchange for cash. Holmes was bailed out of prison on July the 31st. How the are you giving him bail? I don't care if the bail's $5 million in today's money or whatever, or yesterday's money. He literally tried to skip bail and you caught him. There should be no bail. What are you doing? Holmes made a run for it. Again, what are you doing, court system? First traveling to New York City and then on to Philadelphia. He instructed Benjamin Pietzel to meet him there. Pietzel left his wife and children behind in St. Louis. Penn Petzl arrived in Philly on August the 17th, 1894. Over the next 2 weeks, he wrote Carrie several letters saying that he wanted to go straight and settle down somewhere. Holmes, meanwhile, insistently pushed ahead with the plan to scam Fidelity Mutual by faking Benjamin Pietzel's death. The $10,000 payout would be split between Holmes, Carrie Pietzel as beneficiary, and the crooked lawyer, Jephthah Howe, who would smooth over the process of confirming the body was Benjamin Pietzel's. Benjamin rented an apartment at 1316 Callow Hill Street in Philadelphia. He used the alias B.F. Perry and posed as a merchant who bought and sold patents for new inventions. Pietzel did not expect to have any customers. Nevertheless, a man named Eugene Smith, a carpenter and amateur inventor, came by on August 22nd to sell Pietzel a patent for a handsaw that he had invented. This sounds like he's accidentally discovered on a... He's like, what sort of job should we do? What sort of fake business are buying and selling? I don't know, patents or some Okay, buying and selling patents. Great fake big business. We'll set that up and you'll pretend to do that. And then... someone comes along, it's like, hey, I've got a patent to sell you. He's accidentally stumbled upon a legit business. He should have just done this. He should be like, guys, can we forget the insurance thing? I'm just going to do this now. This sounds good. I've already got one patent from some carpenter dude. It's a great handsaw. Check it out. Pietzel seems to have been legitimately interested and may have even seen a future for himself in the patent trade. Exactly. Smith paid Pietzel several visits over the next 2 weeks. On one visit, Smith saw a man he later identified as H.H. Holmes. It's unclear when Holmes decided to murder Benjamin Pietzel rather than finding a fake body. Holmes told ya. Holmes had been studiously paying the life insurance premiums on Pietzel since late 1893, so why not make his death a legitimate one?
Oh, Deleter, are you still here, by the way? I need to just put down 2 of maybe the move.
Anyway, it would spare Holmes having to share the money with Benjamin. Perhaps it'd also kill the rest of the Pietzel's family if Carrie wouldn't keep quiet. That doesn't look suspicious at all. On September the 1st, Holmes left Georgiana at their rented apartment in Philadelphia. Holmes met up with Pietzel, who told Holmes that the scam had to be delayed as his infant son Wharton was sick and he was returning to St. Louis. The story was bullshit. In reality, Pietzel had gotten cold feet. Good for you, but I get the feeling he's not going to escape and planned to do a runner. It would seem that Pietzel really intended to go straight. That afternoon, Pietzel went to the tobacconist and bought a couple of cigars for the journey and went to a saloon where he got some small change to use on said train journey. On September the 2nd, Holmes instructed Georgiana to start packing their bags and that they'd be leaving Philadelphia that afternoon. Holmes left her at 10:30 a.m., went over to 1316 Callow Hill Street, and it was there that he bid Pietzel a good morning and tempted the alcoholic with splitting a bottle of whiskey as a means of saying farewell. Hey, it's 10:30 in the morning. You're going off. Let's get f***ed up. As half a bottle of whiskey, Jesus. As Pietzel got progressively drunker, Holmes spiked his whiskey with chloroform, which Pietzel drank and passed out. Wait, I think I had to breathe in chloroform. I didn't realize you could drink it. Holmes then, you can't drink it. Don't drink chloroform. But as a way of making someone pass out, I didn't know. Holmes then continued to pour chloroform down Pietzel's throat in the same fashion that he may have done to disgruntled inventor John de Brule way back in 1891, until Pietzel overdosed and died. Holmes then broke a bottle of benzene, an industrial solvent used in explosives degreasing metal, and in 1894, in aftershave, of course, and laid a tobacco pipe and burned match next to Pietzel's body. The idea was to make it look like Pietzel had lit up too close to a bottle of explosive materials. Holmes then proceeded to light Pietzel's body on fire. Holmes then left to catch an afternoon train with Georgiana to Indianapolis. Benjamin Pietzel was dead, and Holmes was now planning to murder the rest of the Pietzel family. The phrase, "no honor among thieves," doesn't seem to cut it here. Yeah. What a surprise. Holmes is a piece of shit. Psychopaths, this is the thing. Don't work or do crimes with a psychopath because they're a psychopath. They are going to betray you. They don't think like you. They don't have loyalty. They don't have feelings. Frenzy. On September the 4th, Eugene Smith dropped by Pietzel's office again to discuss his nifty handsaw invention. Smith rather liked the man he knew as Perry and enjoyed talking to him. The door was unlocked and the smell of charred flesh hit Eugene the moment he walked inside. Moments later, he discovered B.F. Perry's body lying on the floor. Smith ran to a nearby drugstore and came back with Dr. William Scott, who immediately suspected foul play. Great job, Holmes. Your one job was to make it look like an accident, and the doctor who arrives on the scene immediately is like, something's up. This is mad suspicious. Let's have a look at his tummy. Oh, look, tons of chloroform. What, he drank loads of chloroform, then decided to have a smoke? Dr. Scott had expected to find a man burned to death in an explosion. What he found was a corpse that had been burned post-mortem, his tongue swollen, and with chloroform leaking out of his mouth. Holmes, you are a medical doctor. How did you not know this? Even more would come squirting out when Scott applied pressure to Pietzel's stomach. Smith also noticed the broken benzene bottle had most of the glass shards inside it, not scattered about the room, as if it had exploded. Nevertheless, the coroner's inquest came back with a verdict of accidental death. Justice. No matter the incompetency of Holmes, there will always be someone more incompetent to cover up for his incompetency. From Indianapolis, Holmes headed back to St. Louis to meet with Carrie Pietzel, having murdered her husband 3 days prior. Holmes told Carrie that the plan went off without a hitch and Benjamin was in hiding. Holmes then threatened Carrie that if she didn't do exactly as he said, Benjamin would probably get arrested, and so would she. Carrie Pietzel felt she didn't have a choice but to obey his commands. Holmes told Carrie to send her 14-year-old daughter, Alice, to Philadelphia to help identify Pietzel's body. The then lawyer, Jeff Howe, began drafting the paperwork claiming the insurance money. He told Fidelity Mutual that B.F. Perry was an alias for Benjamin Pietzel. On September the 22nd, a young Alice Pietzel and Jeff Howe went to a cemetery in Philadelphia to identify Benjamin's corpse. They were joined by H.H. Holmes, who volunteered to help identify the body in his capacity as Pietzel's friend and business partner. Can you imagine she's going to identify that body, and she thinks it's going to be like a body double, and it's not, and she just looks at it and it's like, Jesus Christ, Holmes, you found someone who looks exactly like my dad.
Gonna make some food real quick, I'll be right back. Never mind, fuck that.
Like spitting image. Holmes, where's my dad? Holmes insisted to the coroner that the corpse was Pietzel. It was ambiguous. His skin was now rotting and it could be scraped away from the body. Lovely. Alice was duly brought in and she burst into tears. She identified her father's body by recognizing her father's teeth. Holmes later told her this was a trick that he'd learned in medical school. A check for $10,000 was promptly made payable to Carrie Pietzel, and Holmes rushed back to St. Louis with it, sending Alice on to Indianapolis, where the teenager was told to wait in a hotel for Holmes. In St. Louis, Jeff Howe took $2,500 in the money. Holmes took $7,000 of it, saying that Ben Pietzel owed him $4,500 for the Fort Worth castle. Carrie accepted the story and was left with a measly $500. Having gotten the large share of the money for the actual death of Benjamin Pietzel, ruled accidental by the insurer, there was at this point no strong reason for Holmes to murder the rest of the Pietzel family. But in order to eliminate potential witnesses that could connect him to Pietzel's murder,
Ugly. Yeah.
Holmes decided to slay the entire family anyway. Because he's a psychopath, he looks at it logically. He's like, yeah, but they could get me caught. And it's like, Holmes, but it's a family, an innocent family. And he's like, yeah, but the court thing, I don't want to get caught. This logically makes sense. Because he's a psycho. On September the 27th, Holmes...
Yeah, he had to kill them children. That hairline's atrocious. That bitch was harboring aliens up in that cranium.
demanded that Carrie Pietzel surrender 12-year-old Nellie and 8-year-old Howard, claiming that it'd take them to be with Benjamin. In a sick way, he was telling the truth. Holmes took the children to Indianapolis, collected Alice, and took the 3 siblings to Cincinnati. Holmes was joined there by Georgiana Yoke, his sham 4th wife, who he installed at a separate hotel and who he kept completely in the dark about the existence of the 3 Pietzel children. Okay. Meanwhile, Holmes realized that the law was looking for him. Horse theft in Texas, fraud in Missouri, multiple frauds in Illinois, and even Fidelity Insurance in Philadelphia began to suspect wrongly that the body wasn't Benjamin Pietzel's and that Holmes had participated in some sort of a con job. The Pinkerton Detective Agency was thus enlisted to track Holmes down. They're famously good. Trouble is coming. Holmes wrote to Carrie in St. Louis, instructing her to bring her 15-year-old daughter, Dessie, and infant child, Wharton, to Indianapolis. Holmes and Georgiana proceeded there as well, with Alice, Nellie, and Howard traveling along in a separate train. In Indianapolis, Holmes installed Carrie, Dessie, and Wharton in one hotel, Georgiana in another, and Alice and Nellie in yet another. They were all oblivious to the fact that they were in the same city. Holmes also separated 8-year-old Howard from his sisters, took him to a rental house in Indianapolis, murdered him, dismembered him, cremated him, and scattered his remains. He told Alice and Nellie he had enrolled Howard in school. The night of October the 10th, Holmes went to Chicago for a meeting with an unknown person, perhaps just to develop an alibi he never used. On October the 12th, Holmes arrived back in Indianapolis and took everyone in separate parties to Detroit, where they remained until the 18th. Holmes then caught wind that the Pinkertons were hot on his trail, so he pulled everybody out and crossed the border into Canada, arriving in Toronto on October the 19th. Holmes then murdered Alice and Nellie Pietzel by poisoning them on October the 25th and burying their bodies in the cellar of a rental house on St. Vincent Street. That was what we saw at the beginning of the episode.
See, people back then and these days, they do what I would do nowadays. This is gonna be fucked up when I say it, but I don't care, okay? They're like, give us your kid or we're killing your family. Or I'm killing you. Alright, take them. The fuck? Take the ass. Bye. That's why I can't be a parent. I would immediately be like, man, it's been a good couple years raising you. You have a good one. Have fun with that guy.
Episode in the cold open. That same day, Holmes instructed Carrie, Dessie, and Wharton to go to Ogdensburg, New York State, where he claimed Carrie would meet up with her husband. On October the 26th, Holmes took Georgiana to Prescott, Canada for one night, then went to Burlington, Vermont, where he used to be a medical student all those years ago. He wrote Carrie and demanded that she come to Burlington as well, claiming that Benjamin Pietzel was drunk and hiding from the Pinkertons in Montreal and couldn't make it to Ogdensburg, but he would join them in Burlington soon. This is all getting very complicated. You can tell he's kind of, they're coming. It's going to end soon. In Vermont, Holmes attempted to lure 15-year-old Dessie to a second location in order to murder her. This plan failed when she refused to go with him. While staying at her rental house in Burlington, Carrie told Holmes that she was fed up with waiting and was going to Canada to fetch her husband and other 3 children. Holmes abruptly got up and said he was going to get a gas lamp for the basement. Several minutes later, Carrie went downstairs to find him and discovered Holmes digging a hole in the basement and boarding up the windows. She refused an invitation to share a meal, and after Holmes left, she checked that all the doors and windows were firmly locked. You're just like, what are you doing in the basement? Digging a human-sized hole? You want to have some dinner? Fuck no. A few days later, Holmes delivered a supply of nitroglycerin to Carrie's rental house and set up a tripwire, rigging it to blow in the basement. The next day, he wrote Carrie, instructing her to carry the nitro upstairs in a probable attempt to kill her, but she refused to move it, thinking of the safety of the neighbors by moving an explosive substance. It did not really occur to her at the time that Holmes was trying to kill her and make it look like an accident. nemesis. On November the 5th, Holmes made the astonishing decision to take Georgiana to New Hampshire. He first went to the town of Tilton, where his quote-unquote first wife, Clara Mudgett, was living. Oh my god, she's from back in the day. There, Holmes laid eyes on Clara for the first time in a decade and explained that he had been in a train accident which put him in a coma and had given him amnesia.
What a f***ing asshole, huh?
It was only now that he regained his memory. Meanwhile, he had married Georgiana Yoke, the wealthy young patroness of a hospital who had nursed him back to health. Quite incredibly, Clara Mudgett swallowed this story hook, line and sinker and embraced Holmes, thrilled to have him home.
Ow.
Didn't she leave because he was super abusive? No, Clara, no!
Fly, you fools.
His now 15-year-old son Robert was similarly excited to be reunited with his father. Please don't kill them. You've already killed enough people. Why do you have to... They had escaped and they'd got on with their lives. No! From there, Holmes went to Gilmanton, New Hampshire to see his mother and father, Levi and Theodate Mudgett. There they were overjoyed to see the filthy murderer. He repeated the story about the train wreck, his amnesia, and he introduced them to his new wife, Georgiana. Holmes then spent the next 2 days in Gilmanton, going on a sort of nostalgia trip, visiting his childhood haunts. But it was in Gilmanton that Holmes was spotted by a Pinkerton detective and secretly followed. The Pinkertons were under strict instructions not to engage or arrest H.H. Holmes, while Fidelity Mutual Insurance built their legal case against him for fraud, now having suspected incorrectly that Benjamin Quetzal was alive and well. On November the 13th, the Pinkertons followed Holmes and Georgiana to Boston. Initially, Fidelity Mutual wanted an arrest warrant issued for Holmes on the basis that the coroner in Philadelphia was now claiming that Quetzal's body was a fake. It's the one thing they're getting wrong, even though, I mean, come on. The Boston police considered this allegation weak and scrubbed it. Instead, they telegrammed Fort Worth and asked what Holmes was wanted for there. Sheriff Ray replied in a telegram in just 4 words: larceny of 1 horse. And that was good enough for the Boston police. This is like the least of his crimes. He's a horrible child murderer. What's he want? He's nicking a horse. And I know horse theft back in the day was more serious, but not as serious as murdering children. On Earth...
See, it must have been good back in the day. They literally, you murder your entire family, you just move 1 state over. That's it. Whole new life. Like it didn't even happen.
On the 17th, H.H. Holmes was arrested while strolling the streets of Boston for being a horse thief. While in custody, he was questioned about Fidelity Insurance, and he immediately confessed to faking the death of Benjamin Quetzal, who he claimed was now hiding in South America with Alice, Nellie, and Howard. Obviously, Holmes preferred to go down for fraud rather than multiple murders. This story was corroborated by the train robber Marion Hedgepath, who was still in a St. Louis prison, who had come clean when he realized he wasn't going to get his $500 commission for hooking up Holmes with the crooked lawyer Jephthah Howe. Holmes was extradited to Philadelphia to face fraud charges. I know this comes around to kind of help him out in the end, the not paying the guy in prison, but pay your accomplices. If you've promised to pay your accomplices if you're doing crimes, pay them. Holmes told police that they could find Carrie, Desi, and Wharton hiding out in Burlington. She too was arrested on charges of insurance fraud. Upon interrogation, Carrie said that she was beginning to think her husband was dead and that she was worried about the fate of her 3 missing children. Meanwhile, the lawyer Jephthah Howe was arrested in St. Louis for his role in the fraud scheme. He argued craftily that he didn't commit a fraud at all. He warned police that the body identified in Philadelphia was actually Quetzal's. Turns out, he was right. Throughout the majority of December 1894, Holmes sat in a prison cell thinking that he'd get away with murder and only get a 2-year sentence for insurance fraud. Then on December the 27th, confronted by the allegations of Carrie Quetzal, Holmes changed his story. He said that Benjamin Quetzal had killed himself and left instructions to Holmes to torture the body so his family could collect the insurance. Suicides were not eligible, but accidents were. He's really thought this through. I mean, it's not going to save him because, we're just doing an episode about, we obviously know what happens. But he did think about it, didn't he? But if Quetzal was dead, where were his 3 missing children? At this point, Philadelphia police began to be extremely worried that Alice, Nellie, and Howard were dead. Detective Frank Gale was duly dispatched, and he spent the next 8 months retracing Holmes's footsteps across the northern United States and Canada. On July the 25th, 1895, Gale made the gruesome discovery of the bodies of the 2 girls in Toronto. The cold open. This set off a firestorm in the media. A crowd of 5,000 people gathered in front of the castle in Chicago to watch police excavate the basements. 5,000 people? Good lord. Newspapers began speculating that H.H. Holmes had killed a bunch of different people over the years, dredging up names like Julia and Pearl Connor, Emmeline Segrand, and Minnie Williams. They also speculated that Holmes had killed a great many more people, including some of his own aliases that they mistook for actual people like Robert Phelps and Harry Gordon. Meanwhile, after a grieving Carrie Pietzel identified the scarcely recognizable decomposing bodies of Alice and Nellie, a small funeral was held for them. Their graves were never marked. On July the 29th, 1895, Holmes released a statement through his lawyer. Quote, "Some bones may be found in Timbuktu or the Sandwich Islands that may be brought as incriminating evidence against me. I'm ready to stand trial anywhere in the wide world as far as the charge of murder is concerned." Dude, what does that even mean? You're like, yeah, they might find bones somewhere, then link them to me. Yeah, but mate, when those bones are found in your basement, it's a little bit different, isn't it? On August the 19th, the castle in Chicago was firebombed by unknown perpetrators. They were unlikely to be connected with Holmes trying to cover up evidence. Instead, the perpetrators were likely a few people enraged at Holmes's murder of the two girls and perhaps countless others. On August the 27th, Frank Geyer located the remains of 8-year-old Howard Pietzel in the flue of a stove in Indianapolis. His teeth and bone fragments didn't even get a grave. In October 1895, the autobiography Holmes' Own Story was published. It admits to many swindles, but does not admit to murder. Holmes published it for money, still delusionally thinking that he'd only get 2 years for insurance fraud. He also blackmailed a number of people for money in order to keep their names out of it. At trial, in November 1895, Holmes was found guilty of the murder of Benjamin Pietzel. When the verdict was read, Holmes just stared blankly ahead. On November the 30th, he was sentenced to death. As such, he was never tried for any of the other murders. He quite likely killed 9 people, possibly 11 in his career. After receiving the death sentence, Holmes made plans to appeal to the Supreme Court. He ate a big dinner in his cell, cool as a cucumber, and opened the evening newspaper. During his incarceration, he was subjected to physical and mental examination. He was recorded as aged 36, 5'7", 150 pounds, excessively hairy on his body, with a penis and testicles noted by the doctors as unusually small. His psychological exam, even unsurprisingly, diagnosed Holmes as incapable of remorse, accepting no responsibility for his actions. In short, he was a psychopath. This seems rather out of its time, doesn't it? This sort of medical examination, mental examination, post-conviction. Liar, thief, filthy murderer.
Allegations.
The Supreme Court rejected Holmes' appeal, and the execution date was set for May the 7th, 1896. Holmes said he expected as much and was prepared to die. In early 1896, Holmes received an offer of thousands of dollars to confess to the murders. Although the money was scarcely any use to him now, Holmes compulsively accepted and admitted to murdering 27 people, many of whom were still alive and well. What are you up to? In his confession, he said theatrically, "I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact I was a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to song." After publishing his confession, Holmes began pretending to be insane, perhaps hoping at the last moment to cheat the executioner and get locked up in an asylum instead. When that didn't work, he became a devout Catholic and spent time reading the Bible and chatting with priests. The day before his execution, Holmes made a public statement denying that he killed anyone except Julia Connor and Emmeline Segrand, while performing illegal abortions on them. Holmes woke up on the day of his execution saying that he enjoyed a wonderful night's rest. He ate a meal of dry toast, eggs and coffee at 8 a.m. Thereafter, he was escorted to the scaffold. Speaking to the crowd, Holmes again asserted that he'd only killed 2 women by accident during abortion procedures. He then turned to his defense lawyer, Samuel Roten, and said, "Goodbye, Sam. You did all you could." When the black hood went over Holmes' head, he said to the executioner, "Take your time. You know that I'm in no hurry." The trapdoor was released, and Holmes dropped 5 feet. His neck did not snap. He slowly and agonizingly asphyxiated to death. His body contorted for several minutes, spinning around, his legs doing the dead man's jig. Holmes's fists opened and closed rapidly. 2 people in the crowd fainted. Then Holmes's body relaxed. 15 minutes after the botched hanging, he was declared dead. In the end, it turns out Holmes was right. He wasn't in a hurry. Jesus, that's dark.
Very well written, brilliantly constructed. I loved it.
Dismembered appendices. Number 1. H.H. Holmes may have claimed in his obviously falsified confession to have murdered 27 people, but the hysteria surrounding his trial and the excavation of his Chicago castle made people speculate that he was a butcher, the likes of which had never been seen before in American history. Popular culture in the past 130 years have elevated Holmes' kill count to over 200. Most notable is the myth that the hotel Holmes used during the World's Fair in 1893 was a death trap designed to capture, torture, and murder unsuspecting guests. Hotels are naturally creepy places, so it makes for a good story. Alas, it is nothing more than that. I have to say, I was wondering through this whole episode, like, when? But the hotel. but the hotel with the trapdoors and the things for the traps and the death, which I might have mentioned in my video about him. Apparently it's a myth. The previous video, the biographics video, unless I misremember. But I definitely remember there being like traps and stuff in that hotel, which apparently not true. Number 2, H.H. Holmes is one of 99 gazillion people theorized to have been Jack the Ripper, because Holmes lived contemporaneously with the Ripper killings, except that was in London. There is, however, no firm evidence that Holmes ever travelled to London during the times that the killings took place. Moreover, the brutal nature of the Ripper killings is completely foreign to Holmes's cold and fastidious MO. Number 3, Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio were attached as executive producers alongside Paramount TV for a movie on H.H. Holmes. The plan then changed to make the story into a TV miniseries. At the time of writing, production has not yet commenced. Yeah, it's kind of, there's not been a show or a movie about this yet. It's weird considering how famous it is. Number 4. What is perhaps most intriguing about Holmes's case is how he was a psychopath whose primary compulsion was fraud, theft, and deception, not murder. He may have gotten off in his pantaloons to lying and stealing, but it is unlikely that he derived any emotional or sexual pleasure from killing his victims like other famous serial killers. It is, however, proof that a psychopath engaged in compulsive deception has no qualms committing murder if they feel their goals are threatened. Yeah, that's what I was saying, like, the thing about just because he doesn't feel anything properly, he's like, about the family, it's like, why would you kill the family? It's like, because I could have got caught. It just reduces my chances. Like, it's killing a family. Just doesn't care. No qualms. As such, in the wrong circumstances, a supposedly non-violent psychopath is just as much of a danger of a society as a classic killer. A harrowing thought when you consider an estimated 1 to 5% of the population suffers from some degree of psychopathy. That is 1 in 100 people you meet in daily life, or even 1 in 20, which is mental. I mean, some degree of psychopathy, can't that just mean, like, you don't feel things properly? Like, maybe you're not as emotional as you should be. Maybe you're not as, like, empathetic as a regular person. Then I think that's okay. You know, it's a sliding scale, isn't it? Like, some people are super emotional, some people are less emotional, and some people are psychopaths. Like, straight, cold-blooded psychopaths. Sleep tight, ladies and gents. Yeah, Jesus Christ. This has been a long, I'm looking at the clock time on this, it flew by, episode of The Casual Criminalist. I do hope you enjoyed it.
The awesome, uplifting story about murder. Let's find another one.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Casual Criminalist. As always, hi there, I'm Simon. What happens here, if you're new to the format, is I have a script in front of me. Kevin has written this one, and it's called John Edward Robinson's The Internet's First Serial Killer. We're going to explore it together. I have no idea who John Edward Robinson is. I mean, he's the internet's first serial killer, isn't he? But you know as much as I do, dear listener or watcher, if you're on YouTube. Hello. Leave a like. Leave a review if you're listening as a podcast. I mean, after you've enjoyed the show. Or if you've been listening for a while, you might be like, now's the perfect time. Well, I mean, just keep watching. That's fine. Let's go. Once you start watching this video or listening to this podcast, you must finish it. For every friend you forward this episode to, Bill Gates will donate $5 to the Unicorns for Orphans Relief Fund. If you don't forward this, at least 15 of your friends will die before the day is over. Your mother will die, and your crush will never speak to you again. Consider yourself warned. Oh my god, this is like so 90s. Do you remember those chain emails that would go around? And people would genuinely forward that shit. It's like, yo, you don't understand.
Speaking of that, I found one of those in regards to PetSim earlier on fucking Twitter. It was in the Pet Simulator, like, Twitter community. And it reminded me of middle school immediately because they were in there talking about some reply with anything, and I'll tell you my first impression, your nickname in my head. Do I like you? You are my blank. would I hit, hug, high five you? I'm like, am I in middle school again? Hit like for a TBH and a rate. I used to make those knowing damn well I only wanted one person to like it, and they never did. Fuck that bitch.
And they're like, 5 of your friends are not going to die by the end of the day. You know how unlikely that is. And it's like, Simon, well, we all go home on the same bus, don't we? What if the bus crashes? And like, well, it's still got nothing to do with a bloody email, does it? But people are idiots. If you had the internet in the 1990s, this should sound all too familiar to you. Our inboxes, chat rooms, and IMs were filled with chain letters ranging from the innocently cute to the downright threatening. Yeah, and none of these things had any other goal. It's not like they were trying to extract some Bitcoin from you. And one of the most fascinating things to do is if you're ever in your spam folder and you get one of those things that it's like, you know, I've been spying on you through your webcam. You gotta send me a Bitcoin or I'm gonna like reveal this all to the internet. Oh no, they'll mail it to all your contacts or something. And obviously, don't fall for that shit. But you can look up a Bitcoin address, right? So you know they're like send it to this Bitcoin wallet. You can look up that Bitcoin wallet. You could just Google it, or not Google it, but plug it into one of these Bitcoin wallet explorers, and it will tell you how many people have been sending money to it and how much money that wallet has collected. And you can bet that's one of many wallets that these scammers are using, and you can see it. And it's like it's full of thousands of dollars of people who have just been suckered in by this email scam. And I'm like, that's depressing. And someone is just getting mad rich doing this. It's crazy. But back in the day, it was just like, yeah, I just want to see if people will forward it around just for their notoriety. Okay. Maybe Bloody Mary was going to come to your house and kill you if you didn't forward the email. Maybe your crush would talk to you the next day if you did. They were all full of empty promises or empty threats because ghosts and magic aren't real, as we well know. So, of course, breaking a chain letter isn't going to have any effect on your life. Still, there are a lot of superstitious people in the world, and there were more than enough of them to keep this nonsense going. Admittedly, I'd sometimes pass them on if they were particularly funny, but even as a stupid teenager, I didn't believe in any of this stuff. Well, as a teenager, I also didn't. But as a teenager, there was also that, like, niggle in the back of your mind where it's like, what?
Excuse me? Just say Baldy?
What if I don't know? What if it is real and it's just something I haven't learned yet? And I'm like, 99% of my brain is like, push that stupid part of your brain away, whistle boy. But there's also that, and it's also like, things and superstitions. And I don't know, I have that, like OCD thing where it's like, I'll check things like more times than necessary. Like I'll be leaving the office and I'll be like, did I lock that door? Is the door locked? Is that door locked? It's locked. Is it locked? Is it locked? Yeah, it's locked. It's locked, right? It's locked.
Are you sure it was the right room?
Yeah. Why do I do this? I don't know, because my brain's broken. But whatever. But it's like that thing. I also like... But I'm also super rational, so it doesn't make sense. But then also there are like, they're like touching wood and stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, no, something terrible hasn't happened. And then I'll be like, touch wood.
Even after all this, you still believe, don't you?
And it's like, why am I doing this, Simon? You don't believe in any of this nonsense, but still find myself doing it. I think it's that like weird OCD thing rather than me actually believing that any of this stuff is actually real. But then isn't all of that just some sort of weird brain issue? Fascinating aside, Simon, we're like a paragraph in. Can you please get on with it? By the time 1999 rolled around, these chain letters had been going around for years, long enough for us to develop the word spam to describe them. This also meant that they had been around long enough for everyone to ignore them. So, if you were hanging out in the Star Trek Deep Space Nine chat room on AOL, it would be easy to ignore the following message. If a guy by the name of Slave Master contacts you, do not answer. He has killed 56 women that he has talked to on the internet. Please...
Okay, first off, you don't have to tell me that. I'm not talking to a guy named Slave Master, first off. Let's just start with that, okay? I don't think any conversation I'm gonna have with Slave Master is a conversation that should continue. I very much think that's one I wouldn't have. Because why would I have a talk with a guy named Slave Master? What the fuck?
Send out to all the women on your buddy list. Ask them to pass this on. He has been on AOL, Yahoo, and X sites so far. This is no joke. And please send this to men too, just in case. Send to everyone you know. This is not real though, right? Like, Slave Master is really the name you choose. And also you can change your username or just set up a new account. This is just a stupid forwarding thing. But the fact that this is actually someone called John Edward Robinson, and this is a casual criminalist and not a Decoding the Unknown, which is another podcast I do, which deals with, like, mysteries, where this would definitely fall into the fact of none of this is real. I'm slightly alarmed, given the length of this script and all of that I just said, that Slave Master is actually a serial killer, which is intense and scary. Let's see if I'm right. What do you think? I've cleaned up the spelling and formatting a bit for Simon's sake. Oh my god, thank you, Kevin. That makes such a... Like, anytime I'm reading, like, oldie English, or, like, stuff written by stupid people on the internet, or just, like, oh, the worst is where it's, like, stupid people saying things in court, and they can't construct a sentence properly, and the court reporter must be like, oh my god, what? And then I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh my god, what? So I appreciate it being cleaned up. Thank you. Late 90s internet writing was atrocious. Internet writing today is still atrocious, but even in its most legible form, this sounds like absolute bull. Sure, they're not prophesizing mystical powers like Bloody Mary, but this chain message is aware of the presence and identity of a mass murderer, yet somehow he hasn't been arrested. I mean, there's plenty of mass murderers who haven't been arrested. There are more than you think, which is the scariest thing. Like all of those famous serial killers, they're just the ones who have got caught. Consider all the missing people who haven't been attributed to those serial killers. Or not just missing people, but murders that haven't been solved. Oh my god, there are way more serial killers out there than you can imagine. Which is terrifying. So I hope, oh my god. There's no comfort to that, is there? There's more serial killers than you think. Lock your doors. It makes as little sense as any other spam, and it was easily ignored. I honestly don't know if I ever encountered this message personally or not. It's not as memorable as being hit with a sexy bus or 7-year-old Timmy who had no eyes and whose face was covered in blood. I don't know these ones either. I do know the example Kevin gave in the intro, though, like about, 15 of your friends, blah, blah, blah. That is super familiar, but I don't know who Timmy is, and I don't know what the sexy bus is. If I did see this...
Baldy, I don't think the sexy bus is a thing. Unless he's just talking about the bang bus. How the fuck would he call it the sexy bus? That sounds retarded.
This message, however, I can guarantee you I was already far too bitter and jaded from years on the internet to ever forward it. If you were on the internet in those days, there's a very strong chance you saw a chain letter and ignored it just like I had. But enough introduction, it's time to sit back, relax, and feel the crushing weight of guilt on your chest as you realize that by forwarding that message, you might actually have saved a woman's life. The story was true, Slave Master was real, and he was still actively killing when that message circulated. This is the story of the internet's first serial killer. Holy shit. How have I never heard of this?
Because I think if you go on the internet, look up Internet Slave Master, you're gonna get something I don't think you can see. I don't think you're gonna get the result.
This is insane. Like, I love internet stories, and I do a true crime show. Have I not heard of this one? This is wild. Like, I was just like, yeah, you know that guy, you know that story. This one's like, have I never heard of the Slave Master killings? By the way, the internet's first serial killer is a fine title. I feel like John Edward Robinson, the Slave Master killings, is possibly better. Although
I don't think it matters.
I feel like Slave Master in the title is probably going to get me demonetized. And it will join the rest of the Casual Criminalist episodes, which are... Let's just say this show is really long. And it doesn't do quite as well when it comes to advertising as some of the other shows. Mostly because of things like murder and torture and rape and the Slave Master killings. The early years... John Edward Robinson was born on December the 27th, 1943 in Cicero, Illinois, the once headquarters of Al Capone. His childhood was a bit of a mixed bag. This is the Casual Criminalist, so you best believe he had an alcoholic father and an overbearing disciplinarian mother, and he was the middle child of 4 siblings. He is dizzy.
You never had a chance, Timmy.
It's the serial killer melting pot right here. Still, he was not without his accomplishments. He joined the Boy Scouts of America in 1955 and by November of 1957 had achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. This is a pretty remarkable feat, as there are time requirements that you must spend at certain ranks. With a mandatory 16 months of waiting and an immense amount of work needed, John would have had to be extremely dedicated to have earned his Eagle Scout in pretty much the bare minimum time possible. It was a remarkable enough achievement that he was said to be an elite future leader, probably the last thing he needed to hear given his delusions of grandeur. He was cited as being overly pompous after the ceremony, which does beg the question what the appropriate level of pompousness would have been. Well, less. If they say you're overly pompous, how about being slightly less pompous, or just not pompous at all, because it's an unattractive personality trait. Also, why do you have to spend a certain amount of time at each rank? That doesn't seem very meritocratic. It's like, yo, if you're ready to advance in an organization, then they're like, well, you got to spend 2 years as junior manager. It sounds like something straight out of The Office. You're not ready to be promoted, even though you're far more competent than everyone else here, because you've only been junior manager for 6 years, and we need 7 years of service. Oh my God, there was another thing I was reading about. People mocked me in a previous episode of Casual Criminal.